Here we go, unmuting. Hello. Can you hear me? That's what we should find out shortly. Oh, good. Are we coming through clearly for you? Oh, yeah. I do. Oh dear. It's about as high as I can make it. Oh dear. Yeah, I think we may be having the same problem. Oh, I maybe need to add a source that is audio. Sorry, guys. Is it audio input capture, I guess I need? Um, yeah, no, hold on. Many apologies. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, it does not give me a. Sorry. Give me a second to just. I need to think here because I don't know what's. I don't know why I need to keep setting this up every time. Desktop audio. Okay, that's what I need. Uh, I am, yeah, terribly sorry. Uh, okay. Let me put our little starting soon thing back up. So um, so I have output capture and it just does not. Uh, Yeah, you should be able to see it now.
I am surrounded by birds. It is quite noisy, so that's what that is. Okay, Newt, can you see Tracy's screen? Blah blah blah. Wait, scroll down, Tracy. Scroll down. Blah 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 blah.
Okay, it should be
Okay,
audible
so
audio output capture is on.
Yeah,
it seems to be.
Maybe you have to delete the other sources. Actually, I think it might be a conflict. So delete the other audio capture sources, because that's what I remember when I was reading up this issue.
Oh wait, Doug, can you hear Fable?
Wait, everybody, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm Fable. My voice, it's blah blah blah. I'm saying something. Type something if you can hear my something. I'm not worthy, you know.
Okay, I think they
Thank
hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, they can hear
they
me.
hear
Okay,
us.
wonderful.
Okay, I'm
All
so
right, there
sorry,
we go.
everyone.
All right, all right. Sorry about that, yo.
All right, now we're starting for real. There we go.
Nobody knows what I sound like. Maybe I should just say I'm worthy.
All right, hello everybody.
Hi, it's me, Worthikid. I'm a funny clown guy.
I sure do wish that hadn't happened, but here we are.
I sure love Rankin bass. This is how Worthikids sounds.
So, hi everyone. We have as a special, very esteemed guest, Worthikids here today with us, and we are very excited to be able to talk about animation with them. So I hope you're ready, and I hope you have come equipped with questions for. You can ask all of us, or you can ask Worthy, or whatever you like. And I'm not gonna. I don't know if you have anything more to say, Fable. I'm not going to delay this much longer. I'd like to just let Worthy talk and introduce.
I have two things to say. One is that super chat donations, they go towards supporting our project and Worthy's project. We split it 50-50. We're all about Shop Talk is about supporting other indie artists, indie animation in particular. Also, for everyone asking, is that a rooster? Yes, I live in Isla Nublar, and I'm surrounded by dinosaurs, so you will hear dinosaur sounds on occasion. If in case you're like, what the fuck? Is that a soundboard? It's like, no, it's an actual chicken. There's an actual chicken right outside my door.
We aren't playing sounds to tease you. It's just the aviary back there.
Yeah. I have a raptor pen. I have some like free range chickens just meandering and having a shout. So, but yeah, that's what's going on. So hello. Yeah. Oh, hi, Kelly. Also, we are right now. Shop Talk is. Thanks, Morgan. Thank you for the comment. Shop Talk is currently taking place in the Lackadaisy server. We have given Worthy a guest pass so that our crew can filter in and occasionally ask questions. So you get a little bit of the studio experience even as we are here. So yeah, everybody, thank you so much for joining. And yeah, we are joined by Worthikids. Worthy, you want to say something?
Hello.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Hello.
Yeah, I just want to pop in, see what was going on in here.
Yes.
Hey, Kelly.
That other voice is Kelly Turnbull, who's one of our boarders.
Hello, Kelly.
And also close friend of mine for years.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. Yep. Okay. When our crew found out we were going to be interviewing you, Worthy, they got really excited. Like, oh, Worthy!
Oh yeah. Every time, just so you know, every time you release a new video, we pass it around in here and share the link, and everybody's just delighted by it. So it's a lovely departure from the usual like social media agony of every day watching the news unfurl, and to just have like this little short little animation that just makes you smile or laugh. It is just lovely. So. But without further ado, let's let you introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about your background and tell us how you got into doing independent animation to begin with. Just give us a little insight.
Sure. I got into independent animation when I was a teenager. I started doing... I started with a very early animation job where I was tracing GIFs. I was getting paid not like very, very little to trace GIFs, and then it was some sort of app that couldn't use the actual GIF, so they needed like an indentation of it, so you just trace it. That was my first animation job, and I did that in GIMP. I was animating in GIMP. And then after that, I moved to Flash, and I started uploading I started uploading little fan anime GIFs, but then I started doing longer videos, usually the reanimations. I don't remember what my first one was. It was something. And then I just kept doing that for a while, and eventually I started to get bigger freelance animation gigs. Until relatively recently, my animations have been successful enough that I'm not doing any freelance at all anymore. I'm just going off the YouTube ad revenue and Patreon money. Shout out to the patrons.
That's fabulous. Yeah, good for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Living the dream.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you've never done any like studio work or anything. You could come from a background in studio and then just like diverted off to doing your own thing. Exactly. Just...
No, I've never done any studio work.
Wow, fabulous.
That's definitely giving you like your production pipeline. From what I've seen, is pretty interesting and pretty unique, and it's actually been really inspirational even for our project because
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Blender announced a grease pencil, and like there was
Yes.
like various tutorials ish floating around about it, but the problem is that they're all done by people who are like have been using Blender forever, and they're not really
Right.
doing traditional animation. So to them, the tool is like something else entirely. And the way they talk about it in their tutorials is actually kind of hard to parse if you're coming from a 2D animation background. So when you revealed your pipeline, like for instance the how you did cats, or like showing how you
Oh, yeah.
did your cat short, or how you did the Austin Powers joke bit where you were just like messing around with 3D models and drawing grease pencil
Yes.
objects on top of it. That was really inspirational because that was the kind of thing I was hoping to do. But nobody was talking about how to do it that way. It was like I was trying to piece it together in my head, but you went and actually showed how you did it. And I was like, there we go. That's what I was hoping for. Some example to follow.
I'm so glad to help.
Yeah.
The sorry, who's?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I definitely saw like a ripple go through the animation community when you posted those like Austin Powers kind of like grease pencil things, and
Yes.
everybody was like, "Oh my god, look how Worthy's using 3D! Like, oh, it looks so good!" And, like, it was like, oh, you just like changed the game for indie animation.
Yeah.
I'll say that Austin Powers thing was the test for Big Top Burger. I explicitly wanted to do a test, and the Austin Powers was my attempt, and that was my first attempt at trying to blend it like that. Well, I did something with Olaf before that, but that one's not on YouTube, so people don't see that one. That's a Twitter exclusive.
The exclusive Olaf. I remember that though.
Yeah.
The technique though, it was very it's very new to me and very complicated, because I remember when I first started doing it, I think with Austin Powers, I was like, oh, this isn't going to work with the current version of Blender. I need the new experimental build.
Yeah.
Because they kind of were redoing the grease pencil. There was a reason that it wouldn't render correctly if you were using the older build. And now Blender's updated, and the stable version is the correct one. So it will work now. But when I was doing Austin Powers a couple months ago, it wasn't ready yet. So I had to use the unstable version. But it does not crash much. Blender's very good at not crashing.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, so yeah, you're gonna hear us probably like splue all about Blender. So Blender is a big part of our production. Like all of our 3D background, like all of our backgrounds are actually first done in 3D. Like they are virtual physical spaces that you can move around in, and we did that so it was easier for the background artists to do paintovers, but also then we can render out stuff, and then they can just like touch up the renders. Also, the vehicles are 3D. We're gonna have like props that are 3D so that we don't have to ask the animators to figure out how to draw a gun. It's like, no, that's super annoying. Let's just not bother. And I handed the layout to our board artists also, so that they got a chance to basically, instead of sitting there and doing boards and have to remember like the layout for everything, it's just like just create a camera, name the camera, save those cameras so that we can use them later, and just pick your shot. Like you're in the space with a camera. So but
And
yeah,
is
like,
that all Blender? Are you doing all that in
it's
Blender?
all Blender.
Yeah!
All of it. Yes, it's all Blender.
I didn't know
Anything
any of this. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
I really I just assume anytime any small studio, big studio is using 3D, I'm like, they're probably not using Blender though. They're probably using Maya or something.
Oh,
That's
I'm actually
so exciting.
I'm working at Titmouse on like the new Star Trek show, like Lower Decks, and that's like they're using it's Blender for like the backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually,
Nice.
so on I think on Bob's Burgers, I don't know for sure because I never worked on Bob's Burgers, but I think they used like SketchUp to make environments in that. Like I know that was kind of like a common one. Like I mean, in Ben 10, they'd give us a lot of SketchUp models. Like we had a SketchUp model of the inside of the Rust Bucket, and we had like SketchUp models of some of the cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, they gave me a SketchUp of a rocket ship. They were like, "Don't bother drawing it. Here's the ship."
Yeah.
It looks like the way SketchUp works changed or something. Like it's I don't know, but everybody's kind of like gravitating over to Blender now, so it's like pretty common to see it in studios. I was glad that I learned to use it for Lackadaisy because they're like, "All right, we've got Blender models," and it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm up to speed."
Yeah, it was like I had to apologize to all my board artists and be like, "Look, I know this is really difficult. I'm introducing to you a new piece of technology." Which is always frustrating to have to like pick up and learn on a production, particularly like a little indie production like ours, and it's like, here, you have a month to do your job. Also, here's some new software. I'm so sorry. And but I was like, it's going to be a little bit annoying, but it'll save you time in the end if you don't have to worry about where everything is, because the scenery is like way too complicated to keep track of. So I don't want you focusing on like drawing a car or a bridge or where that is in relation to other things and worrying about how this is going to interact with layout. I just want you to focus on staging and characters, because that is really what doing board work ought to be. It's like you're picking your shot, so taking some of the in board work, folks, particularly in the even in the industry space, board work has slowly absorbed the roles of other jobs. Like they've increasingly been asking us to basically be editors as well. They're asking us to be layout artists, all kinds of things. And so I wanted to take that away because I felt like that's too much pressure to ask a board artist to design things on the fly. It's not really what the job is about. But yeah, like this software as it becomes more available and like less expensive or just more powerful at a lower price point, it makes animation more available, and I'm really excited to see where the community goes with everything now that they have access to these tools.
I 100% agree. I'm also very excited to see more and more people using Blender. I'm always shocked when it's in legit productions because I was introduced to Blender at a very young age before I started animating or 2D. And at that point it was practically a joke. It was like a joke program.
Yeah, I came from a game industry background, and we had always used Studio Max, which was another Autodesk, or it still is another Autodesk piece of software. And actually, if I was Autodesk right now, I'd be kind of shaking in my boots about Blender's rise to prominence because it is free. But yeah, back then it was so scrambled. It was just because it's open source and it didn't really have like a consistent UI at that point. Like nobody had really organized it, so you'd get like different menus that had just different layouts and different terminology and everything. So it was like impossible to navigate. But
it was a great program for me because I was like 8 or 9, and you don't know what bad UIs look like.
Yeah.
You just think, oh my gosh, look, there's a cube. Wow.
Yeah, what you can do with it is amazing, and then at the same time, it can be so frustrating because like the UI can just be such a daunting thing, even with a program that isn't open source. Like Max and Maya are both like behemoths as far as software goes.
Maya's UI is specifically one reason why I never really got heavily into 3D, even though I've had like so many Maya training classes. But like every update they would mess with stuff, and there'd be like all these like weird glitches associated with stuff, and that's a paid program where you're paying like a lot of money.
A lot
of money.
Yeah.
So like unless you have the money to play with, it doesn't really make sense to just mess around with because you can't afford it, and it's like super quickly out of date and broken and doesn't work with your equipment, which was my experience whenever I even dared to pirate it. So,
See, I'm most impressed with you figuring out, like, broken, like, version 1.0 Maya. Or
yeah,
not
no,
Maya,
that's
like,
actually really amazing.
Blender, because it's like,
Yeah.
I have, like, what I guess is, like, the most recent polished version of it, and I was, like, almost in tears trying to figure out how the camera worked. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the version you have now that they updated just last year, which made me confident about using Blender. They totally reworked the UI, so it's way more comprehensible now. But
Yes.
yeah, it
They
is.
they did the big jump to 2.8,
Mhm.
and I know the fans were like, "Well, it's so different. You should just call it 3.0." And I was in the group of people who are like, "What I love about Blender is they're very like comically strict in that they're always like it's 2.8 because the last one was 2.99. Or sorry, 2.79. So, or if the last one was like 2.79b. Where well, other programs like another program I use is FL Studio for music and sound design. They were on they were on like version 7 when I started using them, and then they just jumped to 10 because they were like, it's our 10th anniversary, and it's like, shut up, you do 8. You have to count up. Be like Blender.
Yeah, Harmony just released an update, and they went from 17 to 20. So we like, where'd the other numbers go? And I think they're just gonna start naming it after years. They've stopped bothering.
I just think that's so silly because you're
I
just
think
gonna look like a
Blender-
fool in hindsight.
But that's the thing. Blender's actually gonna change their naming scheme too.
That's true.
Yeah.
They are gonna make it hop a little quicker.
Yeah, it's kind of silly that it went like 2.78, 2.79,
Yes.
2.79.5, It's like, guys, just advance the number. It's fine. It's your decision. You can just make the number go.
Start naming them after national parks.
I remember Android used to update, and every new update was another letter of the alphabet, and they would choose a candy based on that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Android Jelly Bean and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Did they
get away from that because they were trying to stop being like cute, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, sure, their marketing team was like, "No, it's not serious enough. Everything has to be super serious and slick now." Meanwhile, I giggle every time a Discord updates with their like goofy splash page talking about like what fresh memes they have included in the update. I was like, "Sure, guys."
Well, so like
Yeah.
I grew up with like Macintosh computers just because that was like what we always had, and when I have started using Windows because that was the only thing I could get like as a tablet PC. Like you could get like the I forget what they called them, but it was like basically like a Crackintosh. Like they would build you.
Yeah.
Well, it was like that, but it was like they would hack it together with like a Cintiq, so like it was kind of like a Cintiq companion, but like an Apple one. But like you could only get them on the black market. Basically, it was like this one dude making them, and I was like, I'm gonna hold out for Wacom's thing. So then after Wacom started coming out with the companions, like I kind of gravitated away. Like I haven't really owned an Apple computer since I was in college, and so I started using them again for like Ben 10 at Cartoon Network because they use all like Macintosh and stuff. And I was like, wait, weren't they named after cats? Like, why is it Yosemite now?
Yeah, I missed that. That was cute. Then you could like create a persona for every scene. Okay, now I'm just being goofy. Anyway, moving on from Blender talk and all that. Let's talk projects. Like everybody here, I'm sure knows about Lackadaisy. Do y'all know about Lackadaisy, or did you guys hop in here from Worthy's retweet? I'm not sure. But yeah, projects. So Worthy, I just.
Yeah, we were raving at you a moment ago about Big Top Burger and what a delight it is because we share every episode on our Discord server.
Also,
I think
I first found out about you with that Bougie video where you did like the little segment from Bougie, and like I had not heard that song and I had not heard of you, and like in one go I'm like, this is an awesome song. This is an awesome animator. And I started paying attention at that point.
I think the first one.
Thank you. I remember that one.
Yeah, I wish that was a full music video. They should just, Brockhampton should just get in touch with you and be like, hey, you want to finish that for me? Yeah. This is like, I'm really interested to see the continuing saga of Blue Man hops out of ambulance and blows up cop car with his head. Yeah. But, yeah, Big Top Burger is really interesting. When did you come up with that idea? Because I know you've been doing, like, little short skit jokey segment things for a while, but something with like a ongoing canon of sorts with characters that you follow. That's a pretty recently released, but how long was that in production before you put it?
I don't think I've talked about the Big Top Burger backstory before, but it's from
that deep canon. Yeah.
It's from a couple years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago. I got an email. I think I can talk about it. I don't know. Nothing happened with it, so I can talk about it. It's from someone at Netflix, and they were like, "We're looking for people to pitch kids show ideas. Can you come up with an idea and pitch it, whatever?" And I was like, okay, I'll try and come up with an idea. And the idea I came up with was inspired by a Casey Green tweet. Shout out to Casey Green, amazing comic artist.
One of the best people on the internet. Casey Green defining it.
It was his tweet was something about someone flipping burgers at McDonald's, but it's actually a clown flipping the burgers, and I was like, oh, that's a fun idea. And so the pitch I came up with was a pizza place that's run entirely by clowns, and it's called Free Pizza. And the name of the series would be Fast Fools, which I thought was a fun pun. And
why don't you just rename Big Top Burger to Fast Fools? Like, fuck the other name, go for that.
Well, I wanted to change it a bit because I wasn't sure because I did sign something, but I looked through it and I was like, I don't know, I think I'm in the clear, but I'll still change it a little. I like Big Top Burger setting a lot more. I think making it a food truck is just a lot funnier than a restaurant. Oh, yeah,
because then they can go
change
places.
Of location.
Then they can go places. Yes.
Yeah.
But I pitched it, and they were like, this is all right. Could you change this, change that? And it kind of trailed off, and I was like, okay, well that didn't work. And then a couple years went by, and when it was looking like I wanted to do more original stuff, which was really after Witches on Tinder, once that one came out and it was received well, I was like, okay, I should do more original stuff then. And I was like, well, what's a show I can do? Oh, I know. I already have one. I have this very old Fast Fools idea. And so and I'd had it in the back of my mind for a while, and I've been slowly changing it. The original Fast Fools did not have Billy. It was Tim, Steve, and Penny. And they just sold pizza. The name of the restaurant, I already said, was Free Pizza. And one of the jokes was that the customers are like, is the pizza really free? But it's not. And then I started Big Top Burger production a couple months ago. It was this year. I'd been putting it off because I'd never reached out to voice actors before, so it was a lot of pressure. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to show people my script, and it was crazy.
Was it Emily Cicierga on board, right?
No, Lindsay Small-Butera.
Lindsay Small.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she's a friend of mine.
My brain did an oops. I'm sorry, Emily, but yeah, Lindsay Small-Butera, and God, she does great work. I was.
They're both amazing.
Yeah, it's just so sweet. I love their little chatty dog thing. Is really.
I'll say, Lindsay, I was not nervous at all to reach out to Lindsay because we've been friends for a couple years, and so she was like, she was the one where I'm like, well, I can get Lindsay. No, the tricky ones are the people I don't know, or the people who I'm like mutuals on Twitter with, but we never talk, so it was a lot more pressure. But once you start sending those messages, you just have to keep sending them. Once you reach out to one person, it's like, okay, well, I'm out on the limb now. I better just reach out to everybody.
Yeah, I when we were staffing up for voices, I was actually kind of terrified. I was like, I had to reach out to people like Mike was the first person that I got in touch with joining the project of voice because I knew that we needed a solid Rocky voice before anything.
Right.
And Mike was basically a coworker because we both were on Has Been. He obviously is he played Angel Dust, and I was just an animator. But I was at the premiere, and because Viv's went and rented out a big theater for everybody. It was very sweet of her, and so everybody kind of got to hang out for that night. And I had already been thinking about getting in touch with Mike, but I wasn't sure how to reach him properly because it's like, should I email? Should I DM? Should I ask Vivs? Is that awkward if I ask Vivs to put me in touch with this guy? but I was able to like basically tug on his shirt and be like, "Hey, Mike, you want to be on a thing with cats, like, alcoholics or something? You seem like a dude good at fast talking. You think you could do this?" And I was terrified because I was like, "This sounds like a scam. It sounds like a scam." At that point, like I couldn't publicly talk about Lackadaisy because we were waiting for some stuff to wrap up, and we didn't want to like make a big announcement before everything was like really pulled together. So basically, it got announced as the Kickstarter got announced. Very few people knew about it beforehand, and having to reach out to people and find voice actors while keeping everything discreet is really difficult. Like I sent an email to Sung Wong Cho, ProZD, saying, "So would you like to be Mordecai?" And I was like, please don't think this is a scam. Please don't think this is a scam. And thankfully he actually got back to me. So I'm very fortunate about that. Yeah. But yeah, reaching out to people to join your project is terrifying.
It's hard and scary, and I'm lucky to have Fable on the team here. You're way more
I'll quickly say, as a little preview, Sungwon Cho makes an itty bitty cameo in the next episode of Big Top Burger.
Oh no!
I just thought I'd bring that up.
Oh my goodness!
Oh god!
Crossover!
I mean, not that I've gotten to like make anything I've been pitching yet, but like, I feel like, you know, I did that rodeo where you email, like, just cold email like every studio that you can get a hold of, and it's like, I found that like the more you ask people for things, the less hard it gets in the future. Like, it's like the more you get turned down, the more you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, the worst happened, it's fine.
You
like,
get used to the rejection,
It stops feeling like, you know, like, oh my god, if they don't say yes, then, you know, that's the end of it. And it starts feeling more like, you know, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Wouldn't it be cool?
Again, hoping somebody bites. Kelly, I really hope at some point in the future we can have you on Shop Talk as one of the creators with your own thing. I mean, we were already talking about maybe having comic people on, so you already qualify. But I really want to see like your stuff also come to fruition at some point. I really like your Jelly Apocalypse idea. It just charms the hell out of me. I'm like, yeah, no, that sounds super on brand for Kelly.
So you don't need to talk about me. You know, Worthy's here. You can fuck him up.
But I love my friends. Yeah.
Are you doing 100% of the animation work, or do you have like a small crew of other artists helping out?
I do all the animation work. The only help is the voice actors. That's the only outside people.
That's amazing.
How do you keep up with that? Like, I'm struggling to keep up with everything on this, and it's eating my life.
Well, it's embarrassing to say, but I'm not. I meant to release episode 4 weeks ago, and it's just kind of fallen apart around me. But because people don't know that it was on a schedule, you know, I'm not really disappointing anyone.
Disappoint people often enough and they won't be disappointed.
This is the story of my life with regards to my comic. It's like
I've been telling Tracy she's looking into getting help. I've offered her help.
Everything is always late. It's just always, that's just the way it is, and it doesn't matter.
It's really hard to fit a person in with like a pipeline that you developed where it depends entirely on you. Like it's difficult to think that way. You're like, well, what can I foist off on someone? And you go, but I have to do this part, and I have to do this part, and I have to do this part.
The desire to
totally true.
Yeah, the desire to do something by myself came from I was working, like I said, in the game industry and doing kind of an art director role, and that was all just like it went from me doing art myself to delegating tasks and making spreadsheets and making art Bibles and things like that, and like interviewing candidates and training interns, and I just was so upset that I didn't have my hands on art anymore, that I had to go off and do my own thing like in the nighttime hours. Like I'd go to work and then come home and work on the comic because I just had to do something creative that wasn't managerial work, and so I was like, I have always been reluctant to then make Lackadaisy itself into a team project because I worry that it would be the same scenario of losing the hands-on aspect of the art and, you know, relinquishing that to a team of people. And
you have to pick which thing do you like doing the least.
I mean, not that I ever had the budget to pay a team of people to make a comic anyway, but, you know, it's not.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. As an indie creator, you are generally going to be strapped for cash, and so you're going to have to be as resourceful as you can. So anyway, I'm really impressed that you do all of that work on your own, and I totally understand.
You built a pipeline that works with, like, can one person do this? How can you do it? And it's like, I've seen your other stuff where it's purely traditional, and you figured out a way to take that look and also make use of 3D in a way that helps rather than like hinders. So it's like your design aesthetic is all very rock and bass, and so like the characters don't move a ton. Like they pretty much like snap into position, and like figuring out how to go like, okay, well, this is how I do things. Like, how can I modify what I do to work in a 3D environment, and basically doing the fun parts by hand, which is like the faces and stuff like that.
It's true.
Rather than just drawing a head over and over and over again. And I think that's really, really creative. Folks asking, no, that's Ashley. That's not Ashley. That's Kelly. Kelly is one of our board artists. So yeah, she just popped in. We are in the studio server, so we do have some crew members who filter in. So if you hear someone other than me, Worthy, and Tracy, that's
it's probably one of the Lackadaisy animators or board artists or background artists or any of the other
like
people.
To hop in and listen in. So but yeah, it's the process that you use when you're working by yourself is very different than when you have a team. Like, having done a lot of a lot of commission work myself, and how I plan out how I'm going to do things, or like a short and going, okay, well, if I do hand this part off to someone, like, how can I set up the file to work with them, versus like working in industry positions where I'm in a studio and like I'm very much just like a piece of the total project, and how you have to think differently along the like for each of those. This has been very different, this project. I've never been at the head of something quite as big as this, so it's definitely having to constantly ask myself like how I'm going to approach this, how I'm going to, hand off work to people down the line that makes their lives a little bit easier. But the nice thing about working by yourself on your own project is that you don't have to use any like official nomenclature or worry about communicating with other people.
Like, the communicating aspect of working with a team is so much work. There's so much.
I'm
terrified of that.
Yeah.
My boards are not readable to other human beings.
I like my boards. If I'm doing boards for myself, they look totally different than like what I am doing right now for the boards for Lackadaisy, or like what I've done in studios, where I have to remember that somebody has to like look at it and understand that this line means something, and they don't have to interpret my chicken scratch. But also, when I'm
your boards for this short have been so crisping, and you've called yourself out for like how like crisp. You were like, oh, I told you guys not to do this, but I'm doing it.
I know.
Don't even pretend that your boards are anything less than beautiful.
Oh no. I mean, to be fair, I am taking the reins off a little bit on this because I'm trying to be as descriptive as possible to folks. Since, like, I'm asking them to do a lot. So I'm trying to make things simpler down the line. Of course, it does mean that I'm giving myself way more work, but hopefully in a way that makes things easier down the line. But it's not much about my
I do think the other thing is that, like, if you're making a show for a studio, then like they're the ones who kind of decide like what the animation's going to look like. It's like I mean, using Ben 10 for an example, it's like, I have no say over how Ben 10 gets animated. That's like 100% the timer who's like filling out the X sheets and sending them overseas. But like, in this project, exactly what you want the characters to move like, so you're kind of like, doing like, your stuff especially has like a lot of breakdowns in it, because like you're trying to kind of like guide the animators on like what, like how you want them to animate.
It's
like you're the cheat timer.
I have to take like the acting beats in my head and basically translate them for other people, versus like if this was just my thing. Like, if you were to look at the boards I did for my Game Grumps animations, they are really rough. They're really rough looking, because I knew that it's like, well, I'll figure this out later, because that's part of the joy of working indie also, is that you can kind of noodle it a little bit, since it's just a lot of it's just done for your pleasure. But I've always kind of existed in this space between indie and professional stuff, where I've done indie more as commission stuff. So this project has been kind of my, I mean, I'm getting paid for it, but it was also kind of for the joy of it. That's for sure. But yeah, Worthy, like you're working on just it's really funny stuff. Like it's like such off-kilter humor. I love it.
Yeah,
where it's just like fully
is.
embracing an awkwardness. You know,
I was going
it's
to
like
pass along one of the chat questions that was kind of going where you're going. I think it was like, what is your creative process to write the story for your animations? Like, how do you come up with your ideas and your humor? Where does your humor come from?
Well, in terms of like inspiration, my humor very strongly comes from SpongeBob, which I've seen every episode of.
Yeah.
But also I know some people have heard of it. The anime Bobobo, which they used to show on Cartoon Network, and I saw that as like a tween. And it was very influential on me because I didn't understand what was happening, but I thought it was very funny. And for people who haven't seen Bobo, it's very random humor, but it's like random in a specific way. It's not just like here's something random. It's like you get it. Something emotional is happening, but you didn't expect it to happen. It's very specific. And so I would say I'm very inspired by that, or more my memories of that, because I haven't rewatched it in a long time. But
I've heard of it. I need to watch it myself because I've definitely heard that series mentioned frequently as far as like a fun animes to watch.
Yeah, I'd give it a peek. It's if you've seen, it's definitely similar to other like anime humor. I also love the humor in One Piece. I think One Piece can be extremely funny at times.
You also do a lot of segments from like the Eric Andre show and the it's the guy with the curly hair who's
Steve Rule.
Yeah,
Steve
yeah.
Rule.
Like a lot of that kind of like comedians comedy humor where it's like the way it's paced and structured is very much kind of like for comedians by comedians. And it took me a while to come to appreciate that form, but like the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, no, I'm about this now. Just pure absurdity.
Well, I'll say for writing my shorts, this is very new for me with Big Top Burger because I don't typically write them at all. I'll write down. Well, I usually don't write down anything. Like for the Palpatine
Steve
one.
writing for you? Is he just? Is it Steve actually has the pen and he's writing it down for you? Just hands you the script, and there you go. That's Big Top Burger. Yeah, no, the Palpatine one. That is a like to me the Palpatine animation you did is the third Star Wars.
Yeah, we said that. I actually haven't seen the movie yet.
Neither have I.
So I'm just going to put Worthy's cartoon
from that one. That's all
as
need.
that's canon for me. I'm just gonna leave it.
I'll say when I released it, a bunch of people were telling me like, did you see the week's script? How'd you know? And I'm like, no, what? What are you talking about? And I was angry because I'm like, this better not happen in the movie. I'm gonna pay to see this movie. This better not happen.
That's what it was like. I was both impressed by you and disappointed in the studio for like, it's like the most ridiculous thing that could happen is apparently what happened, but even a little bit worse. You should have added.
Put Yoda
by the way, hello, daughter of mine, or something. Just make it worse.
God, I had no idea that you didn't like. I totally thought that you just like whipped that thing together in like a week or so. I was like, wow, what?
I meant to drop it a week earlier before the film came out.
Oh my god!
But I got sick. I got like a cold, and so that threw me off. And I ended up releasing it on the day it came out, and I still got people on that day like going like, "Wow, you made this quick!" And it's like, what do you imply? You imply I made an animation in 2 hours?
God, you got it out. You would have been like the modern Nostradamus or something.
Oh god. I love that you released a new cut though after you released it. Where you're like, and now Yoda has a snake. And he just has a snake now, I guess. And like you showed like how frustrated you were modeling, animating this goddamn snake.
That was a lot of fun. I always forget that version exists. It's unlisted, so you have to like have the secret links. But
probably saw it on your Twitter like forever ago. You're just like, by the way, here's another version. But also I saw the oh Yoda, you old sponge, and like that line like cracked me up so much. Yeah, all the outtakes of that where you were searching for like the funniest possible line. It's just like they're all gold. They're all just ridiculously funny.
I'll say that's where what I was saying before is that it didn't have a script because I was riffing all the lines, which is where those outtakes come into play.
It comes across like improv, and that's part of what makes it so funny.
It's like improv, but it's cheating improv because I can do 20 takes, and I'm also playing off myself. I don't try to do multiple lines at once, though. I'll record whatever the character needs to say and re-record it until it sounds right, and then only once that sounds right, I'll record the response line, and I'll do that one a couple times until it sounds right. Or maybe I'll get it in one. That's pretty rare, but so I slowly like build the dialogue back and forth. That obviously only works if it's you doing all the voices.
Yeah. Or you have just like one other person and you're
in
like,
the room. Yeah, that's
shit.
true.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we do voice recording, and I'm like, every hour is $100 per person. So I have to be fun police during recording, which is sad because the voice actors have such fun together. Like as
we get them together in groups, and it gets very very entertaining very quickly. But it's also very hard to stay on track.
Yeah. It's like, guys, it's literally hurting cats when you have the voice actors in, and they get really into characters. So we'll just start fucking around. We have so much audio of them just
talking to each other in character, but not reading from the script. They just go off on their own.
I will say that absolutely happens in studio recordings too. Like there's so many like clips I heard from like Ben 10 records, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have like preserved that somehow.
Do they not? That's so sad.
Yeah.
No, they do. They save them. It's just I don't have them because they're on their server.
Oh, I got you.
Meanwhile, our raw sessions are made available to all the animators. So because I'm just like, yeah, if you want to fuck around with something, go right ahead, guys. It's a totally free space. Go right ahead. And my only stipulation is if it's a line that exists in the script, don't post it online until the short is out. Just because you got to leave some mystery for people. We are pretty transparent about much of the production, but like we had to leave some things a surprise. Yeah. Like Act 3 is not something that we freely talk about because that's all like climactic spoiler stuff. So we kind of talk about it in euphemism and that kind of thing. But yeah, no, the voice actors, when you get them together, they're very entertaining. In fact, we have one who just hopped into Shop Talk. Hi, Val.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Val.
Hello.
Val is our Zib. He's done a great job. We had a whole session where we wanted Zib humming something, but Val didn't know the song. So so we were trying to teach him Blue Skies. And it was like the recording of that is the most charming, sweet thing, and I can't.
It's like I don't know if you guys have seen the episode of Cromartie High where they're like trying to hum the song, but it's like that was exactly what it felt like.
It was very sweet.
Very embarrassed, admittedly.
No, it was adorable. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm sure I was being insufferable, but.
No, it's me. I was the one who felt insufferable to be. Sorry, I'm pretty chill right now. And I'm tired. No, I felt like I was the one being insufferable, to be perfectly honest, because I was like adding that unnecessary flair for some reason, wasn't I?
It's okay. No, you got style. Sometimes, I was like,
that's the great thing actually about this medium is that I'm sure you've started to realize this, Worthy, since you now have other people on your team, is that the collaborative aspect of it is actually one of the most fun things. It's terrifying because you're like responsible for so many other people, like the more folks who are on crew. But once you kind of see what everybody can do together, it becomes like so much more inspiring, and you put so much more of yourself into it as a result.
It's true, and I will say I think Big Top Burger is so much better than anything I've done before because it has multiple voices. There's something about having a bunch of different voices instead of just one person that it makes it come to life in this magical way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one thing that drew me to this medium. Like I was inspired to go into animation, watching Lion King, which a lot of people have. But what really got me into it, like viewing it as like this is a job that I could do that seems like it would work for me, was the making of book for Lion King, where they actually talked about like the difficulties of production and like how the crew interacted with one another and explorations and what they had to like pick and ditch and that kind of thing. And that fascinated me. The idea that people could come together and make a piece of art that could stand as strong as that film. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to make stuff with other people. And I wasn't like a social person, definitely not as a kid. Like I had very few friends. And so the idea of being able to work for with other people was like a pipe dream, basically. But yeah, that's what drew me into the industry more specifically. But I'm glad that I've been able to take those experiences and bring them back into the indie space, because if I can make our process here transparent enough, then maybe that can save some people from having to reinvent the wheel in terms of how to go about things. And that way, like, you can have even better and bigger indie stuff that's like more ambitious and can compete with the big boys, basically, and give them some pause and go, maybe we could do something different.
That was like one of my favorite things about I don't know if you saw the movie Tusk, like the what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? He's so famous. Yeah, but the director, Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith.
Yeah. But like he basically made that movie in public. Like, it started as a joke on the podcast, and then he and then kind of like every step of the way, it was just kind of like, like, here's how we're finding investors, like, here's how we're setting it up. And like, by the time, like, I went to the, basically, like, my friend took me to the Night with Kevin Smith Q&A thing that they did when they were screening it at the ArcLight in Hollywood. And, he was talking about kind of the process they went through making the movie, how by the time it hit theaters, like, the movie had already made back its money on, like, all the streaming arrangements they had lined up and stuff like that. So they were like, like, this movie, like, everything we make in theaters is gravy. And he basically, like, taught his audience, like, I mean, obviously, like, he's Kevin Smith, he can get these investors way easier than, like, Joe Nobody can. But, he wanted to show people, like, here's a template for, like, how to make a movie.
Yeah, I think he's a perennial favorite in large part because he came from nowhere and just made Clerks and got his start that way. And it's just kind of inspirational that he wasn't like somebody who had already had their foot in the door in Hollywood or had famous parents or something like that. So yeah. Always.
Yeah, I tell people who like feel sheepish about the fact that they don't have like studio experience or that kind of thing. And I'm like, look, no, you could totally work in a studio. It's just, you're just not right now. Like, they're not better than you just because they're working on something that's a movie or a television show. Like, you guys have the chops. You totally do.
And arguably, in fact, doing the independent thing is not lesser than studio work either. So, I mean,
it's like, it must be great to not have all the enthusiasm crushed out of you by people who are just
yeah. A lot of people are learning that art school even is like maybe not all it's cracked up to be. So
I mean, if you can get healthcare out of it or something, that's great. But like
that's a big benefit.
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, I don't know. Like, you got to pick what's best for you as a creator. So
it's like really the only way I can. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I was just gonna say, like, the only way I could, recommend art school to people, like, in the States with, like, the prices you have to pay for American tuition, like, in good faith, is, like, if you need, like, a degree to get, like, a work visa or something like that, because, like, it's like if you don't absolutely, like, if you don't need, like, the piece of paper that says, like, I have a bachelor or something, then, like, it's just, like, there's so many other ways to, like, I mean, especially, like, next year with art schools all going online, like, there is no difference between what you're going to learn from, like, CalArts online versus, like, networking with art people on Twitter or something and, like, reading all your friends' tutorials.
Or paying significantly less with, like, something like Schoolism or something, yeah.
What were you going to say, Val? Yeah.
I was going to say I find it funny you bring this up because a friend and I were speaking the other day about how people seem, especially in America from what we've heard, and I guess in England as well to some degree, people are seemingly skipping university and college a lot and just buckling down a lot of the time and learning everything they need to online or just from directly from people they know.
Well, I
thought that was interesting that you brought that up.
So I don't know anyone personally who did it, but I have been told that, like, on the kind of, like, LA animation scene, like, a lot of people who kind of, like, grow up in LA and, already live in the city and want to kind of, like, get the CalArts experience without just paying, like, they care more about the networking and hearing the things than they do about, like, actually, like, getting the piece of paper that says I went to CalArts. Again, I don't know how valid this is, but I've been told that people would just, like, sneak into lectures and just, like, sit in lectures and hang out on campus and stuff, because then it's like you're meeting the people who are there and you're, like, getting those connections and you're learning, like, the wisdom they have to impart, and you're just not, like, getting the piece of paper that says I went to CalArts and, like, the critiques.
I don't think the teachers give as much of a crap about who's sitting in on their lectures than the college collecting the money.
Well, like I'm Canadian, so I went to Sheridan, and like nobody checked the attendance in those lectures. It was just like, you walk in the unlocked door and you'd sit in the room.
That's what I did at USC. Like, I would just, I wasn't officially taking a class. I would just stop in and like listen to film analysis lectures. So I got like even more out of my education than I would have otherwise. But I'd say that to folks interested in art school, yeah, by now, like back when I was a kid, you couldn't really make use of what we're recommending because the resources were just so much more limited. And that was like 10 years ago. But nowadays, there's no reason you couldn't do that. And I'd say if you're going to do any kind of formal study, it would probably be more useful to, say, study history and philosophy, like, English, whatever. Not language, but like, studying like literature and that type of thing. Because I think that would serve you even better down the line than learning the specific technical skills. Like you can pick that up on your own, but formal education can be useful as a way to parse a lot of information you might not otherwise be exposed to on your own and give you some sort of baseline that helps you with communicating later. But yeah, like education is definitely becoming like a lot more available, and it's a lot less locked up behind, expensive gates than it used to be, which is good because it keeps getting more expensive and more business focused than it is education focused. So I think it's good that we're seeing cracks in that system now, because it means that there's a chance to build something better. So anyway, I want to move on to more questions. Also, yes, that is my dog barking. I'm sorry. Again, I live in a jungle. The jungle includes wolves. So we have a question by Nathan Stanfield, who asks, Tracy, is it weird hearing your cats finally talk?
Yeah, it's weird and also pretty amazing. So, yeah, it's been like, I don't know, it's a whole different dimension and angle that having separate actors voicing the characters puts on everything. It's I'm still trying to like, I don't know, come to terms with it in some way, because I have to kind of like incorporate some of that into my own like thoughts of what the character is. And not to say that it's like it's rewriting the characters or anything, but it's like you want to absorb it because it's so vibrant and colorful and adds such extra dimension.
Oh yeah.
So
no,
yeah,
especially like everything Benny has done is just like I can't imagine that hasn't inspired you.
Yeah, I mean they don't just bring a voice, they bring more personality and to it, and yeah, it's really something. I almost don't even know what to say about it, because it's like
and like if they share something in common with the characters, then they'll give their own like their image in their head of like what the character is like, and then you can like talk to them about it a little bit, and like
you can bounce back and forth with them and discuss the character, and they might have their own thoughts and everything, and it's for the animation project it has been amazing to have people who seem to be in tune with the characters already, even if they weren't familiar with the comic beforehand. They catch on pretty quickly to where we're going with the character, and I mean, being an actor part of the skill of being an actor is finding the empathy points and sympathy points where you can kind of like really get into the character's head or something. But yeah, it's been pretty incredible. I feel extremely privileged to be able to be working with such awesome people, and they're just so much fun. Yeah, I mean, just I think back on our recording sessions, and they were exhausting, but they were just like, my face was hurting afterwards because we laughed so much and smiled so much the whole time. So
it was Go ahead.
That was me with the Big Top Burger recordings, especially with specific people. You know the people. The hams. Yeah. In fact, there was the audio chain in the call with Lindsay wasn't super great, because sometimes my audio would appear on her recording, which is bad because I'm laughing all the time.
Yeah.
We had some problems like that too. Yeah.
So Malcolm's take. So for those who don't know, Malcolm and Benny play Seraphine they play Nicodeme and Seraphine respectively. Not the other way around. That would be odd. But and those two hit it off so fast that you could instantly believe that they really were brother and sister.
Yeah, they had like instant rapport, and it was just amazing because
and they kept escalating together. Also, the recordings, like we just rewrote like chunks of lines just for them. We were just like, yeah, you can come up with something better.
Benny would just like spout out this line that she said like her grandma used to say or something, and it would just be like the perfect line for this thing. We're like, can we use that? Can we steal that from you and your grandma? Like,
that's one reason why we were concerned with getting, particularly for those characters, people who shared that heritage, because you can't write that. That's not our background. You don't want to go into the recording session and be the Creole expert. That's madness. So you want to find someone who can add to it, who can like elevate your expectations, because that's what makes it fun. So
kind of in a similar vein, Worthy, you've done work with musicians before too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm thinking, of course, of the xylophone short, which I love. And Squidward's House says, do you write the music or the lyrics first? So I'm not sure.
Always music. I'm terrible. So I always write music first and come up with.
Worthy, you're cutting out.
Whoops, we lost you a bit there.
Okay,
oh shoot, am I cutting out?
Yeah, it might be Discord.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, Discord does do that. So.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I always write music first. I'm terrible with.
Worthy, could you check your settings real quick? Because it might be that.
You might just want to like. Yeah, you might just want to like leave and come back. Sometimes that works for me when we're like, you know.
Okay, let me do that.
Click Control R and that will refresh Discord. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like he has a vacuum in the back.
Yeah.
I think that's probably his AC though.
Hello?
Hello.
There we go. Okay, that's better, I think.
Sorry if you can hear somebody vacuuming the street outside. They're vacuuming the street.
They're not vacuuming the asphalt.
It sounds like
a
I don't know.
Back, and they're like, I have to clean the dirt.
Is it all the detritus from the 4th of July or something out there that they're just like...
It's been happening a lot recently. I don't know what the heck they're doing. It's an external vacuum. I don't get it.
Oh,
I don't get it.
Strange.
What the fuck? Yeah.
Is it like a leaf blower or something?
Yeah, it does sound like
it could be a leaf blower. I haven't actually seen it. I just hear it many days.
Yeah, it does sound like a leaf blower.
You should start recording audio now.
When you referred to it as an external vacuum cleaner, I was like, it sounds like he's trying to describe a leaf blower.
Backwards leaf blower.
It's a backward vacuum. It blows things everywhere else.
Yeah. So I love to use like precious gasoline to move leaves from one place to another.
Yes.
Wait, leaf blowers use gasoline?
Yeah, they're like lawnmowers.
They can. Some of them plug in. Like I have an electrical one, but yeah,
look, I'll be perfectly honest with you all. I've never seen a leaf blower in England. I'm pretty
have
sure
you seen a leaf?
What? Leaf blowers are a very American thing.
Yeah,
I guess I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the British are as obsessed with their lawns and lawn care as like Americans
I don't think that we mostly like there are front lawns and everything in England, but we mostly have back gardens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes more sense. It's like the front lawn is where dogs poop.
Like for example, many houses. I believe my house is one of them. I think it's quite an old building from like World War II or something, because they're like joint houses, so you can't like just walk around the side and get to your back garden like you can a lot of American houses.
You have to go through the house to get back there.
Yeah, gotta go through the house or hop the fence if you forget your key and your mum. May I ask Worthy a question?
Yeah, please.
Hello.
Everybody ask Worthy questions, please. Yeah.
Hell yeah, Worthy, big fan. I've been following you. Like, sorry if I just want to say, I've been following you since the Blue Guys video.
Your Boogie, Barkington.
Yeah, Boogie. I've been following you since you posted that video, and I just loved your style and everything. And obviously, a while ago, I believe still, you were talking about we were talking about them the other month, Tracy. The people that did all the puppet stuff. You know, that you've been
Rankin
with.
Yeah, and I said that Worthy is so.
Rankin Bass.
If anybody knows Rankin Bass's work, they did the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
All of those stop motion Christmas movies you grew up with.
The original Lord of the Rings and Hobbit animated bits, you know. So
the one that Ralph Bakshi didn't do.
That's what I wanted to ask actually. Yeah, the Rankin Bass. So I'm very tired as usual because you guys always have these like things when like late in
I'm
English
sorry.
time.
Yeah.
No.
Val, it's entirely on purpose to put you in character. Perpetually tired.
Yeah. You know, I do feel fairly in character with how like just chill I am today, I guess. Well, the question is, so I know that you love obviously the puppetry stuff and everything, like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which I'm less familiar with the puppet stuff, and I'm more familiar with like the 2D animation.
Right.
So what do you think of like the more 2D animated Rankin Bass movies? Like a personal favorite of mine is like Flight of Dragons, and I think The Last Unicorn is just amazing. Schmendrick, my boy. I fucking love Schmendrick the Wizard.
I actually haven't seen Flight of Dragons, so I should check that out. I'll make a note of that. But I will say I've seen Last Unicorn a couple times. I really like that one, but The Hobbit, which is one of their 2D ones, is one of my favorite animated films of all time. I think it's basically a perfect film. The way they the way they execute it, it's so well done. And Rankin Bass are really hit or miss with their overall films, whether the story feels good. But I think The Hobbit was one of their perfect storms with the music. The music's so good. Not just Glenn Yarborough, but Maury Laws does their orchestration stuff, and when he's good, he's so good. I just love The Hobbit.
Well, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like, I remember watching that when I was like 12, like watching it in like 8 parts or 13 parts on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
in like 5
classic
minute
pirating
and
angle.
everything.
Yeah.
I like sharing a little room, my brother in the study, like headphones on, like tucked away in the corner, watching The Hobbit, wrapped up in a blanket, and be like, "Oh my god, this is freaking awesome!" And I loved the voice acting as well. Like,
yes,
Bilbo. I don't know, like. When I watched the new movies of The Hobbit, I was sat there comparing it to the animated.
Yes, me too.
I like the animated one
Yeah, the
more,
animated
one
is
Me
so
too.
much better.
Yeah.
I totally grew up with that movie. Like we had a frame print of all the characters in it, and this big like I don't know, just the whole thing was like 4 feet tall or something, and like framed in glass and like hanging up in it was in my brother's room because it used to be my dad's like computer room. But yeah, that was
I
sacred
remember
text in our house.
I remember when the Hobbit trilogy was coming out, and there was a lot of hype around it because it was a big deal, and people kept posting the song that the dwarves sing. They're like Under the Mountain song, and they're like, "Wow, it sounds so good. Howard Shore did so good." And I was just like, it's not as good as the Rankin Bass version, whatever. And I stand by that. I think the melody he picked is so good. It's very good.
I'll say this: they butchered down to Goblin Town in the new movies. They really did. Like, I love the down to Goblin Town, down to Goblin Town.
Oh, you could get the note, yeah.
Val has an advantage over everybody in terms of like how low the note can go. If Jason pops in at some point, you'll hear his voice too.
I will say, as an annoying little factoid, the person who sings that note in Rankin Bass is the voice of Tony the Tiger.
Oh, it's Thurl
Ravenscroft. That's it.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that. I'm like, well, that's a guy with a deep voice. I'm like, surely there's just a bunch of people with deep voices who can sing like that. And it's like, no, it's almost always Thurl Ravenscroft. If it's from that time period, like 60s, 70s, it's almost always him.
Yeah, I love that he's just like the dude in Sword in the Stone who's like, let the boy try. Is
that him? I know he's in some Disney stuff too.
Oh, he's I mean, it's not Disney, but he's the vacuum cleaner in The Brave Little Toaster.
I knew you were gonna say The Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, that's a fun film. That's like a weirdly dark movie.
It's dark, yeah. That film
is
rough.
When the air conditioner?
Yeah, the air conditioner blowing up freaked me out. The weird dream with the firefighter clown.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of clowns,
terrifying. And I forget if I mentioned it on the stream so far, but I was saying to Worthy earlier that to me, Big Top Burger is like if Pennywise got like hit on the head and like forgot what or who he was and was like, I'll run a food truck. And that to me explains Steve.
It's like a Zombozo scheme that like he got into, and now it's like oh, it's not a crime anymore. It's just his job.
Yeah. So speaking of Big Top, we got a question for Worthy from Louis Gonzalez. My question is, When will we get a fully visible shot of the menu on the Big Top Burger food truck? Also, will Steve ever switch Penny and Billy's personalities in a hilarious style hijink?
Well, I can answer the first question easily. Go to minute 1, second 10 of Big Top Burger Kid. There's the whole menu. It has been displayed in decent quality. You can read it at least. Maybe
we can get someone to screenshot that for us. We can see it.
Yeah. One of our,
the menu involves burgers, fries, rocks, pie, seltzer, and popcorn. There you go. Some people have screenshot it. And the second question.
But no elk, apparently.
I'll ask this at risk of sounding silly. What is seltzer?
Oh, like fizzy water.
What do they call that in the UK or in Britain? Bubbly water,
it's just carbonated water.
It's just sparkling water here.
Sparkling water.
Yeah, we call it sparkling water here too. I guess it goes by different names. Like
it has so many.
What is it different from club soda? I'm not sure. I don't think it is. I know tonic water has like quinine.
Yeah,
in it.
tonic water is different.
My mom drinks loads of gin and tonic.
Because you can get tonic water glows in the dark if you want to make not glow in the dark, but like black light if you want to make like black light Jello for like Halloween parties and stuff. Mm-hmm. Pro tip. Yeah. But yeah, I think I think it might be the difference between like seltzer and club soda is like if you like make it like the seltzer bottles, like, you know, when you see clowns like spraying each other with seltzer, it's like a device that like carbonates the water there, so it's not like you're getting a thing of carbonated water, it's like you're carbonating it yourself. So I don't know if it's like, you know, if you're buying I don't know if that's like, you know, maybe the seltzer expert can come in and weigh in on this, but you know, it's like I don't know if that's the difference. It's like it's club soda if you buy it like pre-fizzed, and it's like it's seltzer if you fizz it yourself.
I don't know. I always bought it as seltzer from the store. Like it was always labeled that for me. But yeah, no. In the U.S., we have like a gajillion names for anything soda related. Like down in the South, like particularly in Louisiana, they'll just call any soda is called a Coke.
Yeah, they call it. There's places where they call it pop.
Yeah.
Like they'll say like, "Do you want a pop?" And it's like, "What? A pop? Are you gonna hit me?" Or like, it's weird vernacular.
I've got a friend that calls every alcoholic beverage beer, and it pisses me off.
That's wrong in English.
Every beverage?
Yeah, every beverage. He'll be like, "Oh yeah, pass me a beer." It's like, Scott, you're drinking cider, mate.
Oh no, he's drinking absinthe and calls it beer, and then someone assumes that must be what it is.
See, he doesn't do it in public. He does it in closed spaces when people
he's
who
fucking
are
with
around
you.
him that don't judge him too. No, it's because he knows that anyone out in the real fucking world would rip him apart.
I'll say, because I work with 2 New Zealand actors on Big Top Burger, one interesting regional New Zealand thing is they call old candy lollies. Any candy that's not chocolate is called a lolly, which is baffling as an American.
Yeah.
Wait, Haribo.
There's gummy bears, right?
Yeah.
Haribo? Haribo make gummy bears.
I mean, I think they're like a company that make gummy bears. It's like Trolley or whatever in the States.
Yeah.
Damn, actually, I've recently bought like 200 packs of gum. I got these fizzy lemon things, and I got these things called camel balls that actually have a picture of a big camel with its balls just dangling on the box. They're like sour gums, but they've got like, you chew them and like they got this, like they burst with like this goo stuff.
Oh god.
Yeah, kind of like bubbly. They're actually really good. I just bought them because I thought they looked silly, and I like carrying gum around. It's like my cigarette, I guess.
It keeps your mouth occupied.
Worthy, might I ask a favor?
Sure.
Could I please get a? Is eternal damnation too hard?
Oh, okay, I'll try. People told me that wasn't a very good impression of Kelsey Grammer.
Honestly, I didn't think I feel like because I did a thing with Chuck Cuba as a class thing back in 2018, and he was talking about how like just trying an impression is good, because even if you know it's not that good an impression or other people don't think it's that good, you've like made a new character and stuff like that.
I just want Frasier as like the demon lords.
Yeah.
Now, like to me, I'm like that just seems very naturally where Frasier should go. They should just reboot Frasier, but now it's instead they're demon lords and they're like punishing the imps and that kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, sure, no, that's totally believable for me. Let's just roll with it.
I'd watch
I
it.
loved it because
Hidden episode.
Kind of.
Yeah.
captured the essence of Frasier in that, even though these mature, like, no, you kind of do, because like these mature, like, fancy, like usually know-it-all men need to go to their father for advice.
Yeah, give me the pants. I'm like, no, that's Frasier.
Give me the pants.
So my roommate and also the voice actor for Mitzi, like, will just loop Frasier endlessly. So like, I never was into Frasier as a kid, but thanks to her, I now have seen probably every episode multiple times just because it's on all the time. It's just her comfort food in the background. So when you released that, I was like, obviously shared it with Ashos immediately, and we were both like, no, that seems very Frasier to us.
Yeah, sometimes the impersonation doesn't have to be spot on, immaculate for it to capture the spirit of the character.
What I'll say is, when I first was seeing the comments, I'm like, oh, I think it's a good impression. And then as the years went on, I was like, it wasn't a good impression. And I will say, I didn't even look up clips of Kelsey Grammer to go off. I was just like, I think he sounds like that. So like, I really
look at him,
I didn't even try very hard.
The cheap seats want to hear you doing Niles laugh. You're getting all the voice actor requests now.
Okay, well, I'll try it. I don't know if I can. Okay, he's internally damning him. He goes, oh. It's something like that. And then the Frasier is like, is eternal damnation too harsh? Like that.
Thank you.
People said, is that Vegeta? Or is that Frasier?
No, maybe the next iteration of Frasier, they should be Dragon Ball Z characters.
I love
you just say it's on purpose. Yeah.
I honestly just loved that one. I mean, actually, I have actually been specifically rewatching Frasier, Malcolm in the Middle, which I have on DVD. I bought like the entire series. My Name is Earl, Adventure Bros.
That's a whole mid-aughts lineup. That is.
Yeah.
Well, Venture Bros came back, didn't it? I haven't caught up with it
again. Their production schedule is like really slow.
I mean,
so it's like every so often.
If the last season hasn't been made, it's like in progress now. Like I think that they're working on the end of it, as far as I know. But like they take their time with it and they make it exactly what they want it to be. Like, it's like there's like 75 episodes that have come out in like 10 years or something, and they're like, that's like, it's about making it like, just polishing everything as much as they can.
Right.
It's one of those like
I can relate to that approach. Yeah. No.
The most heartbreaking disappointment of my adult life is that I never got to work on Venture Brothers because I only got my green card recently, and they don't hire Canadians at Titmouse in LA.
Well, maybe they'll start something else up, because I can't imagine that the guys would go, well, that's it for animation with us. Goodbye forever. Okay, so the other half of the question, before we move on to another question, because I want to get through all these, so we don't sit here for 5 hours, because we easily could sit here for 5 hours and talk. Will Steve ever switch Penny and Billy's personalities in a hilarious style hijink?
It doesn't happen in this run of episodes, but if I were to do a season 2, I guess I'll consider it for this person.
Can Steve switch personalities with everybody else? So now everybody is Steve, but Steve is everybody?
I love the term hilarious style hijink. That just sounds like, that just describes Big Top Burger in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Big Zon asks, for guest and host, how do you deal with all the frustration? The kind that comes when you're working on something and it's not coming out the way you want. Well, it just kind of goes with the territory. You're not always at your best. Sometimes you're tired, or you haven't warmed up yet, or just any number of things. So you just kind of like figure out your own method for recognizing when the frustration starts and how to get through it. And sometimes you just give into it also. You just go, I just can't right now.
I think there's maybe also a little too much, we maybe put a little too much emphasis or importance on things turning out exactly how they appear in your head. Like you might visualize something and then try to recreate that and just get so frustrated. I've erased holes in papers and literally cried over comic pages and things because I couldn't get it to match what my I saw in my mind's eye. But sometimes what you draw or what you come up with ends up better than that, or you might come up with something better than what you initially saw. It may be, improved, or it may be different, and different is okay. It's not worse than necessarily. So You don't.
Also, nobody can look inside of your head and know what you were thinking of. Like, so the experience of creating art is a lot different than the experience of consuming art, because, you know, when you see someone else's work, you kind of get some insight into what's going on in their head, and then it's a collaborative work, like a little bit of everybody. But they're never going to know exactly how disappointed you are in yourself. So sometimes there's like some freedom in that. It's like you have the privacy of your own head is like your refuge and your hell, in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So, and sometimes also like that idea that you had in your head might not actually be better than what you come up with, like, because you are taking a weird like series of beep boop neuron patterns and trying to translate it into something that other people can translate into their own beep boop neuron patterns. So the way to do that, like, and communicate effectively is not the same as like what is in your head when you have access to every possible sensation and thought and feeling and insight into every little bits and pieces and corner. And you know what? Like, that's maybe for the best, because like as fleshed out as you can make your world, you can't literally make it another universe. So you can sometimes kind of hide behind the abstraction, basically, and be like, I don't know, you interpret this. Other times I hope people interpret it.
Everything's a compromise, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you get better at dealing with it too. Because it just becomes part of the experience and not something that you dread, but something you start to understand about yourself. Because making art is just so intensive. It can be very draining. Like, even when you're having a good time, like and you're having the time of your life, this is exactly what you wanted to do, and like your every waking minute is this, it can still be really exhausting. And you will have moments where you're just not able to, and you have to not fight that. Actually, you need to, sometimes you got to go, I'm just melancholy today, and I'm just going to enjoy that feeling, because the more you resist it, the more problems that you'll have, actually. What are your feelings on that?
What do you think, Worthy? Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking, I guess I don't really get frustrated a lot with my work. It's pretty rare, and when it does happen, I'm usually just like, well, I'm just gonna go lie down. I'm done for today.
The nice thing about being an independent creator, and you don't have a set schedule that anybody else knows about anyway. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to step away from the work.
I think also keeping in mind something a video game developer said, I can't remember who, was something like, when you're working on the thing, you have to tell yourself over and over, this is not the final version, even if it is. Because that thought process of, okay, I'm ready to do it again, makes it, it's less of a hill of like, if you're constantly ready to do it again, then it's not so disappointing when it doesn't come out good.
Nobody has to know how shitty your first draft is, and all first drafts are shitty. It's like your best work is not going to be the thing that you put down immediately on the page. And I think sometimes it's like I'll do like artwork and stuff, and I want to show it off to people, and I'm like, oh, I'm taking too long, like anybody else could do this in like a third the time, I'm sure. And I lose sight of like the fact that that's insane. Like, you can't view yourself as like this art machine that just pumps stuff out, at a speed that's like some average that got set or whatever. But also, like, I have no idea what's going on in the circumstances of other artists. And so if I compare myself to their output and their work, and I don't know how long things actually take them, if I don't know like what systems they have in place that allow them to spend as much time as they do on their work, or that they don't have any time and they've had to figure out ways to make best use of their time, you can't just judge yourself against the shallow impression that you see of people and social media places. Like, you're only getting a snippet of their lives. So you have to be gentle with yourself. You absolutely have to be gentle with yourself, because you don't want to hurt yourself and then discourage yourself from making art in the future. You got to like figure out how to keep going sustainably for you. And that's going to be a little different for everybody, like how to approach that. But a lot of it is like, at minimum, eat, sleep, drink water, talk to friends. Those basic human things are actually really important for the art process, because the starving artist stereotype is actually the worst circumstances to do art in. I don't recommend it. I have done it. It's not fun, and it's definitely not your best work.
Yeah, when you're miserable, you're generally at your least productive. So,
yeah.
Although you might be able to look back on it later and draw from that, like sort of alchemize it into some kind of art. Being that way all the time, or putting yourself in situations where you're like that on a regular basis is not conducive to being an artist.
You'll just start to associate that burnt out, like frustrated, like I hate myself feeling with making art, which will make you stop. Because if there's never anything other than that when you're doing stuff, then like your memory of making that stuff, you look back at your work and all you can remember is how miserable you were.
Yeah, it's just negative conditioning, like Pavlovian, like sort of, you know. So yeah, don't do that to yourself. We do have some questions here about 2D and 3D process, but I wanted to ask a quick one that Luis Gonzalez asks, Worthy, why are all of the customers to the food truck so amazingly nice?
I don't know what I'd answer that one. I just sort of write them the way I think it'd be funny for them to talk. Oh, well, I will say, I wrote both of them with the actors in mind. So, if he's not like super duper well known online, but the podcaster who voices the first customer, Guy Montgomery, who's a New Zealander, a Kiwi, that's I wouldn't say it's a shtick to be like very polite all the time or anything, but it's like part of it. So I was thinking of him when I was writing the lines, and hearing him say it was amazing. And then with the second guy, I was just thinking, I want someone very old and polite. And if you know the YouTuber who voices him, he's very, very old and polite.
Yeah, they're all very understanding about the hijinks that lead up to their, getting a burger. But it's I like that it's
the Big Top Burger is everything, not just.
I
the
like
food
that it's
or,
what you don't expect. Like you expect people to be impatient and mean, and I like that it just doesn't play it like that at all. It just It's
no.
Just,
Are they?
They say comedy is all about like taking what, like subverting your expectations.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think we've actually seen a burger in Big Top Burger yet.
We have.
Yes, we have.
Wait, which? Okay, I'm dumb.
Steve takes his hat off, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he has the burger there.
But they have. Oh yeah, and he gave it to the guy. Now, are the burgers at Big Top Burger? Are they like good burgers? They're just kind of average, or like what's the quality?
So I have some shame over that burger you see, just because I did it. I was very on the deadline because that was the first episode. I was like, I need to get this out on June 1st. I was obsessed with that. I obviously didn't need to, but I was obsessed with that idea. So what I wanted to do is I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put so much work into this burger. I want to come up with my own like shitty burger recipe, and then I'll design the burger to look like it, and then maybe down the line I'll do like a video where it's like Steve shows you how to make the simple burger, something like that. But I was out of time, and I was like, well shoot, I guess I'll just make it a normal looking burger and put sprinkles on top, and that's it.
Well, we don't know precisely what the ingredients are. Like they look vaguely normal burger like, but it could be more special than that. Like maybe
it's true.
The lettuce is actually frosting or something.
I don't like to be caught without a plan, and that's where it's like, oh, I haven't thought about this, and I've already put it out.
You want
you can always retcon, but it's like.
Yeah, you want to have that mystique of like, no, I totally have figured everything out, and every single inch of my world is pre-planned, and I am hyper competent. And meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know how many shits a day they take. Well, I don't know like where they go in to like take a bath or whatever, or like or where they like learn how to do this skill, and I'm just like, I don't know, I'll figure it out later.
I feel like there's so many times it's like that's what is like my stumbling block. I mean, especially when I'm doing comics, like when I'm doing storyboards, I get to hand off to someone else. It's like that's your problem to figure that out. But like, if I'm doing like a comic and it's like, okay, they're standing outside the bar, I'm like, oh, now I need to design like a sign for the bar. I'm like, I'm not a graphic designer. Like, it's like, oh, there's my whole afternoon gone trying to design a bar sign.
You have to ask yourself, like, did they hire a graphics designer, or did they just hire some guy to put it together, and that's why the neon's really shitty?
Well, like, especially when it's like a location you're gonna use a lot, like, it's like, I don't give a fuck if it's like this is the only time we'll ever see that spot, but if it's like, like, oh, this is like the sign in front of the bar that's going to be in every single issue, then it's like, oh, I actually have to like put effort into this, so it's not just a different bar sign every time.
For what it's worth, I actually read your comic. My brother did as well. Manly Guys Doing Manly Things. I read that throughout like college and everything.
Aw.
Yeah, and I actually just quite liked your backgrounds and everything. I
So,
felt,
speaking of this situation related to Manly Guys, like, I don't know if you noticed, I never named the agency. Like, I think I have
absolutely right.
There's one comic where they send a letter to Snake, and it's like that's the joke is that there's so many guys named Snake that there's just like they call it the Snake Pit, and it's like the basement is just full of guys named Snake, and they like throw the letters at them. But like the address on the letter just says like that place with all the macho dudes and stuff.
No, I always loved that comic though throughout college and everything. So yeah,
I appreciate it.
I just thought it's also my ask-worthy 2 questions. I'm going to head to bed to be honest.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, 1. How did it feel getting commissioned? I don't know if you've already been asked this because I entered the fray a little bit late into the conversation, I guess. But how did it feel like getting commissioned by like Adult Swim to do that? It was a something night.
A night like this. A night like this.
Yeah, a night like this. I thought that was really great.
So
getting commissioned by
when I got the email, I was very conflicted because it was at that point that was early this year, and I had already decided. I was looking at the YouTube ad revenue. I was like, okay, this is no freelance 2020. I don't want to touch freelance. I don't want any of it because I need to focus on the channel, and I know if I produce animations, I can keep the revenue going. It'll work. This is my shot. And then I got that email, and I'm like, God damn it. Because that's one I can't say no to. So I was very angry about it. I was like, Adult Swim, Especially because my early reanimations were Adult Swim stuff, so it felt like I need to do this. I can't say no to this opportunity, even though I was saying no to everything else. But, and it was so open-ended, too. They were like, just do whatever you want. We'll pay you. I mean, we need to approve it, but it can be anything you want to be. I'm like, that's a good deal. Okay, I'll do it.
Well, I think it.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was wise to take it because considering how 2020 has gone, it's like a little extra cash in your pocket can come in handy about now. Yeah, so.
It's true. Although while I was working on it, the whole time I was just like, I want to be doing Big Top Burger. I want to be doing anything else. Just because when you have to do something, you have to do it. It sucks.
Like I don't know if this is how it works for you too. Like I don't know if this is just my broken ADHD brain or if this is like a thing that's like common with. But it's like it's so hard for me to work on the thing. Like if there's like the thing that lives in my head right now, it's like it is like dragging a donkey to water trying to get me to like work on the thing I'm actually supposed to work on. Like is that the experience you have or?
Yes, 100%. Even lately with Big Top Burger, well, I had a couple days where I was getting very little work done just because I was like, I want to do studies. And I looked up a bunch of pictures on Pinterest. I'm like, I'm going to do a study. And then that's all I could think about was the studies. I did like 20 studies or something instead of working on Big Top Burger because I was like, I just want to do this. I don't want to do the Big Top. And then, a day later, I'm like, oh, it's Big Top time.
Sometimes I'll find that if I just like, if it's a small enough thing that's like the thing that I'm just like hyper fixated on, sometimes it's faster, like all the work gets done faster if I just do the thing that I can't stop thinking about, because then it's like, then it's off my plate, and then it's like, if I try to do the thing that I don't want to do, then it's going to take me like, like 5 times as long to do just this like normal sized task. But if I just do the thing that I like can't stop thinking about, then at least it's done. Brain. And then I'll do like the thing I actually need to do in like one day.
I think your brain needs to take a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it just really needs to do this other thing before you can move on.
It just feels like
you want to go for a jog, but you got to take a shit, and you got to do that.
It's like
first.
There's a tree in the road. It's like it's like I gotta get that tree out of the road before I can drive my car past it.
Yeah,
which is totally metaphorical because I've never owned a car in my life.
Me neither.
You gotta hop up with your motor.
I'll say the recent thing that's been getting my brain is bad because it's too big. I had an idea where I was like, this is like a cool show idea I could do. Oh, I need to do concept art. Oh, I need to think about more. And it's like, hold up. You can't do any of that. Stop right there. That's way too much work to suddenly put in. And I've managed to put it out of my mind now, but it was scary. It was like, oh my gosh, this would be way too much of a distraction. And yet my brain is fixated on it.
You can at least like you can take the idea and you can like pick it up later and be like, if I'm just as interested later, then definitely there's something there. But for right now, I'm doing this, and that was that was the case on my own projects where I was thinking when I first came up with my comic, I was like, I'll probably, this will fizzle out in a few weeks, I'm sure. But no, I'm still obsessed with it. I have actually the rare privilege right now of working on Lackadaisy, and it's eating up so much of my brain space, but it's because for once that like I have this like the obsession with animation, my love of Tracy's writing, and like wanting to do this big collaborative project and like where that can take stuff in the future kind of lining up in a way that leaves me with some sleepless nights because all I want to do is come work on the damn thing, and I have to my crew yells at me because they're like, go to sleep, and I'm like, you're right.
No, I mean it's awesome when it sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, it's like, every so often you get that thing where it's like the thing you're supposed to be doing is the thing that you want to be doing more than anything, and it's like just magic.
It is a rare experience. I've rarely been able to do that, and I hope that that it continues, or I can take that same energy and find it again in the future if this doesn't continue. But if nothing else, we have like a really cool movie out of it. Okay, so another question from Neon Pyre the Cat.
I think Val had another question for.
I did have another question.
That's right.
Oh yeah, you have to go to bed.
I do have to go to bed. It's bedtime for this big boy. Anyway, this next question may be considered personal, and if you think about it deeply enough, you may learn something new about yourself. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, okay. So this is. Oh shoot, that's not a dinosaur. I was going to say a pterosaur, but can I do that?
Well,
or does it have to be a dinosaur?
I when I was a kid, I thought pterosaur was the shit, so I accepted, to be honest.
Okay, my favorite pterosaur is Quetzalcoatlus.
Pretty cool. The giraffe-sized hate stork.
Yeah, with the big like Tim Burton head. It looks like
Beetlejuice
character.
Have you seen Darren Nash's interpretations of that creature and just how, like, I'm like, nobody.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the idea is that they can fly, sure, but like they can also just like walk on 4 legs with this giant neck and just grab shit. And it's like they're not swooping down on anything. It's just a giraffe that can fly. It's like if you took a giraffe, you gave it a long ass beak, like a heron face, and then also its front limbs were wings, so it would just like jump off the ground and flap them weird long legs.
Don't they think like it's like it couldn't fly on its own? It basically worked like a hang glider, like it would like climb up to higher places and then it would just like glide down.
They found out that actually it could launch. It launches from the ground, so the its huge forelimbs actually allow it to get to a larger size and take off from the ground more easily than birds can. And they've done both tests where they've created mechanics. They've created like drones and stuff to recreate this to see, okay, like could it just glide? Like could it only take off if it was like living in a canyon or whatever? That's one reason you saw pterosaurs so frequently pictured as being like next to cliffs and stuff. But what they discovered was that a better model for how pterosaurs work is actually vampire bats, because vampire bats like run around on the ground quite frequently. Like they land close to their their next meal, and then they like clamber over to it, and so they have pretty developed forelimbs for walking around. And the way they launch off the ground is they basically do like a massive push-up, and that gives them the like in that move it also kind of like it can transition into like a flap, an upbeat, like a lot more easily than for a bird, where a bird has to jump with their back legs. But for pterosaurs, their back legs are actually really underdeveloped. It's really just for like being able to walk, period. They use their forelimbs entirely for launching, which is great because then you don't have like 2 sets of muscles competing with each other and taking up like weight and volume on like this body that's supposed to be aerodynamic. So they can just push against the ground with those same muscles. And they're actually probably more efficient flyers than birds and bats, is what they discovered. They were probably some of the best large-scale flyers that like the Earth has ever seen. It's kind of a shame that we don't see them anymore, because I'm willing to bet there'd be something to learn from an animal of that size and thinking about how that could work itself back into technology. And anyway, I could go over.
Let's get back on track here.
I'm gonna go forever, so I have to stop myself. Yeah.
I'm gonna say, looking at the pterosaur right now, the Quetzalcoatl specifically, it looks like something you could see in the background of a Hieronymus Bosch painting.
No, terrifying.
Anyway,
not a dinosaur, but dinosaur adjacent at least. So
no, yeah. I take it. I'm personally a Carnotaur.
It's fine.
I'm a Carnotaur guy.
Yay!
Even more pathetic arms than a T-Rex, and they got those thick little horns on their head. Anyway, it was baller meeting you. Once again, I'm a fan of your work and everything. Lovely being here as usual.
Nice being you too.
Yeah. It was lovely catching up with you.
Thanks for coming by, Val. Always a pleasure.
I'm super sad. Thank you.
Have a good
all
night.
Stay gold. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to just get some of those small questions out of the way because we have some 2D, 3D Blender pipeline stuff here. Simply Misty asks, could you elaborate a bit on the 3D, 2D Blender pipeline used for Big Top Burger?
Sure. Okay, so I would say like 80 to 90% of Big Top Burger is 3D. There's a 3D set that they're on. All the characters are 3D with little 2D elements kind of parented to them. Like their hair is partially 2D because I didn't want to model the hair. It's very annoying. So it's like little chunks of 2D hair pasted on. And then their faces are completely 2D. I animate them like these faceless puppet creatures that hulk around, and then I add the face on later. And then the backgrounds are the same. They're little 2D elements, but mostly they're 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the outlines for the characters are rendered using Blender's freestyle lines. Mm-hmm. So all that does is it adds an outline to any object you tell it to, and you can add like effects to the outlines, and I just add little bumpiness so it looks like the Blender brush.
Yeah, it shifts a little bit also every frame so that it looks like you hand drew it, even though you didn't. In fact, when I first saw your test with the Austin Powers clip, it took multiple viewings before I realized that was a 3D object. I was like, wait a second. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, and I talked about the Austin Powers thing, but I use the shimmer bone, which is, I have pretty much every character hooked up to displacement modifiers, so the whole mesh is actually... It's relatively high poly, even though it's a simple shape, because I need it to be bumpy, and I need to change the bumpiness on the keyframes. Well, on the new drawings, the quote-unquote drawings. Anytime I change the character's pose, I move the shimmer bone, and the whole body kind of fluctuates. And really that to me is key. Yeah. That to me is what makes... I don't think Big Top Burger looks 2D, but if it were to look 2D, that would be key. Is you need the whole thing to be inconsistent all the time, or it won't look right.
It's like that. It's almost like like the Squiggle Vision cartoons, like like home movies and stuff like that. Like there are people who think that they redrew those to get like the line boil on it, but they just had like a line boil processing thing that they just ran over it that just made the whole thing look like every panel was being redrawn. And it's like the 3D version of that.
We're building a node set for that for our own production because we want that Disney Xerox look and the effect of the line boil because it keeps the drawing feeling alive. It doesn't, like, if you only move one part, it becomes pretty obvious that it's just one drawing and it kind of loses some life.
It's true.
But and I have worked on productions where we just draw back over the line. But it's so time consuming to do that. It's just a lot more effective if you can just figure out a way to automate it and then alter it as you need rather than having to just start from scratch on each line. So we have our lead cleanup artist, Ashley Nichols, who has been on this podcast before and people are pretty familiar with. She does Honeycast and she is amazing. She's been our Toon Boom whiz and figured out how to both... She found images of the Xerox pencil lines and then turned that into a brush for Toon Boom. And so like we're literally using like the Xerox pencil lines from back in the Disney Dark Ages. And also on top of that, like figuring out how to vary that line so that the cleanup does not have to redraw it themselves, but you can choose exactly how much it warbles. and figuring out how to create that kind of like hand-drawn look that has this certain like organic appeal that's, you know,
the je ne sais quoi.
The je ne sais quoi that keeps it from looking too glossy, too digital, too replicatable by pretty much anybody with like the same plugins. So figuring out your own system is like a really good way of keeping it looking unique. So it's not so out of the box. It's, you know, part of it's a deliberate choice that you implemented into the production that gives it a certain something that makes it yours, as opposed to just what everybody else can do. So
I will say, I was commissioned to do a Batman Spider-Man animation by Lindsay Swan-Butera.
Oh my god!
This was a couple years ago. You can look it up on YouTube. It's called Batman Noir Detective. And of course, in case, I'm sure people can sort of tell, but all the shimmers in Batman Spider-Man are drawn by hand. And Lindsay didn't like tell me, oh, you have to do them all by hand. But I was like, if I'm doing a Batman Spider-Man animation, I have to do it accurately. And it was horrible because it's not even 2 shimmers. It's a 3-frame shimmer loop. You have to draw every drawing 3 times. It was so painful. I would never do it in my own animation, but it was worth it for Batman.
Yeah. I had, so Nick, who's actually listening in, Nick, can you hear me? I don't know, he's deafened himself, but I'm going to poke him in case he wants to chime in. But Nick did this test drawing, this test illustration of Mordecai where he's barely moving at all. It was just like this experiment in acting for this particular character because he doesn't really move like your usual animated character. He's like very subtle, small movements. And I was watching him do it, and I'm like, Nick, you do know that, like, you don't have to redraw the line. We're not gonna ask you guys to do that for this. He's like, but I wanna. It's part of the craft. And I'm like, I know, I like to do it too, but you don't gotta, Nick. You don't gotta. So that was entertaining. But yeah, just trying to figure out how to make things like people work smarter and not so much harder is good, especially when you're a small production and it's like you don't have the luxury to noodle around with everything, and it has to get done at a certain point. So you gotta figure that out. So Shimmerbone, really brilliant idea. And I've been pointing. Actually your breakdown. So I've been pointing out who's the guy who did the juice box tutorial.
Yeah. French person. I don't know their name.
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, like if one of the folks in our chat can find that name, because I really want to direct people to him, but I'll just talk about
I found it. Okay. Dedouze, I'll just spell it out. Dedouze is the username, yeah.
Dedouze, yeah. Dedouze.
Yes.
Did a Blender grease pencil tutorial where you can just make a juice box. And I've been telling our animators to I gave them that tutorial. I was like, that will basically teach you what you need to know as far as
for sure.
Like,
that's a fantastic tutorial. When I saw that when it came out, I was like, whoa, thank goodness someone did a good Blender tutorial.
And it's like, because he's coming at it from the perspective of a visual artist who like draws stuff and has hand animated stuff. So he knows what to explain. He's like, here's how you make a camera and set a keyframe and rotate around the scene. Because he knows that the people watching this don't know those things. Yeah. So, but your breakdown also was something I recommended people watch. I was like, look at Worthikids' breakdown on like how he did a lot of the videos, like the cats piece, and just check that out. Like I think you had a video even on like you were like drawing Yoda or something, and you showed that off. But I was linking people to your stuff and being like, so this guy's figured out the tech, and so if you can glean something from this, it's very useful to know. It can at least jog your imagination.
I hope it helps people. I hope people aren't doing exactly what I'm doing to the letter, because I feel like my methods are bad and people should avoid them. But it feels, I don't know in what way it's inefficient, but it feels very inefficient somehow. Something feels wrong.
It reminds me of my digital like methodologies teacher at Sheridan. Like, he was the guy who was responsible for like teaching us Maya and stuff like that. And he knew that like a lot of us didn't like have any interest in going on in Maya. but he was like, all right, here's the deal. If you follow my tutorials exactly as I make them and you show me like exactly the thing that I made that I'm showing you how to make, I'll give you a B. And if you do your own thing and it works, then I'll give you an A.
Good criteria. But yeah, I told folks, I was like, take a look at this, get inspired. The juice box tutorial is great because it's just, you're just drawing a box, and he's like, and then you animate elements on it. So you can either follow it exactly or do your own thing, but it's easy enough to follow along that it will teach you basically everything you need to know. And anything else is just cherry. And I used what I learned following that tutorial, I then applied that to a test where I basically made like an environment out of primitives where it was just like a bunch of cubes and cylinders in an environment with a plane, set up some lights, like really basic stuff. Here's a camera, and the camera moves, it tracks a thing. And I took a cube and I just slid it across the floor. And then I took a grease pencil object and I parented it to that cube, and using the info that I learned from Didus, like I understood now how to draw in a 3D space rather than just instantly going to like the 2D animation space that comes with Blender like out of the box. I was like, no, I want to know how this can integrate with the 3D environment. And that tutorial taught me what I needed to know to do that. And so I was able to block in a cat, a Lackadaisy cat just sitting on the box, and the box goes by, and the drawn image just tracks with the box, and I don't have to go and like redraw every frame. I can choose which frames I want to redraw because it's already in perspective and zooming out there. And it was basically my car test, because I wanted to know, can I draw these characters in the cars and move the cars around so that nobody has to track, making sure that the character like is perfectly in perspective and lined up to this car. Can you instead block in the animation, or even just do some of it just from the get inside a Blender? And that would save so much hassle for folks, because otherwise you have to animate the car and then export that and track your shot and make sure that if there's any camera moves that tracks with that as well. And it's all very, very frustrating. It's easier to just block it in, and then you can take the video footage and like draw back over that, but that takes way less time. And from start to finish, this like scrappy test that I did, which half of the time was just learning what the hell I was supposed to be doing, took me about 3 hours. And if I had done that from scratch, with no blocked in model or anything like that, it probably would have taken me 5 or more. Just because you have to track this character in perspective, and that's really, really hard to manage, especially when the camera is moving, and so it's moving on ones, but you're drawing on twos, so how do you resolve this? And I was just like, okay, I feel better about what I'm going to ask people to do, because now that I've done it, I know it's possible, and how long it takes to even just do something roughly, and it can still look good. So, yeah, I mean, anyway, I've talked enough.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to follow up with a question about more Blender stuff. TAC User was asking, was Blender the first 3D software you used, or did you start with Maya or some other software?
Also, do we want to read the second part of the question?
No, I figured let's get the first part first, and then we'll.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Blender was the first 3D software I used, and to this day, the only, and I have no interest in using another.
I think for what you do, it's plenty. Like, people have asked, oh, you're going to use Maya or whatever, and like, for our purposes, we don't need like the extra advanced stuff that Maya or 3ds Max would provide. It's like, I guess it would be nice to have some of that, but honestly, we're just trying to get it to a level where we can make the handmade elements easier. Like, and I think there's like, Blender is plenty powerful enough for what we have in mind and what we want to do. So that's what we're sticking with for our thing. I think for a lot of people, I think it's plenty.
I'll say I keep up with some 3D channels who talk about working in VFX and stuff, and every time they're boasting some Maya feature, I'm like, I don't care about that one. I've yet to hear a Maya feature. I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. Yeah. I hear about features they don't have, and I'm like, oh, well, Blender can do that.
Blender can do it. Yeah, I'm not sure that Studio Max does anything that's really that much more sophisticated than Blender, based on my experience.
It's like how like Clip Studio, like, I totally acknowledge there are things that Photoshop does that like Clip Studio cannot do, and you can't just say like a blanket like, oh, replace Photoshop with Clip Studio, because like, there's a lot of like actual photo editing and graphic design and stuff like that like you can't do in it. But for the purpose of like everything that I personally do, there's way more stuff in Clip Studio that I need than like Photoshop has, and like there's tons of stuff that like Photoshop doesn't have that Clip Studio does. So it's like, yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna say everyone should use it, but like I use it.
Well, I'm raising my hand. I use Clip Studio.
I've been trying to get Tracy to do at least some things in Clip Studio because I'm like, no, trust me, it's a lot.
I acknowledge that it is probably less taxing on the machine and probably a smoother experience overall than Photoshop. It's just that
nicer. I like the brushes more personally.
The workflow I have in Photoshop.
I will
if you can call it a workflow and less of a work tangle.
That's why I suggest you using it, because it's way
on Photoshop.
Yeah.
See, I will say, to your point, Tracy, I was very hesitant at first to get into, like, it was back when it was like Manga Studio 4, and I was like, oh, Photoshop is what I use, and like I hate learning new UIs. And like every single effort I made to like learn Procreate or like learn Painter or anything like that, like they all failed.
And I didn't find I liked it very much.
But so Clip Studio, it has like the interface is almost the exact same as Photoshop, and whatever's different, you can change it. Like you can customize all the keys and you can move the windows wherever you want and stuff. And it has pretty much all the adjustment layers that Photoshop has. So if like the adjustment layers are like what you're after, then like those are all in there. Yeah. So like all of when like me, who's like the most averse person I know to like learning new things, like I just told the story about how trying to learn how to make keyframes in Blender made me cry. As soon as I drew in Clip Studio for like an hour and I was like, oh, I'm never going back to Photoshop.
I will give it a try, and I think I'll just need to do small illustrations with it first. To grow accustomed to it, but yeah, I'm not doing any such things at this moment because my devices are all melting down on me, and so I'm working in pencil. That's what I'm back
to like moment. 8 years ago, Tracy.
Yeah. Wacom.
10 years ago. Jeez, when did you switch to digital entirely?
I've never done digital entirely. I always do.
Mostly. Sorry.
I always do pencil first, and then. But it's been a while. It's been like a progressive thing. I never like switched. Never just like randomly turned on the digital switch. It was always like feature creep sort of thing, where I was just like, oh well, here's my pencil comic, and then I'll add a little bit of lighting this time digitally because I didn't
and
I just added a little bit more and then a little bit more and then I'm like adding like atmosphere effects and color and, it got out of hand. So
meanwhile, people ask me like, oh, are you gonna do Lackadaisy like they did in Klaus so you can make it look that way? And I'm like, we are not going to animate this the way that Tracy draws it. Like, are you kidding?
We can't. We don't have that kind of budget. We'll do as best as we possibly can. And in fact, we have a test that using Nick's animation and Ashley's cleanup work that kind of demonstrates the look we're going for, and I think it's really very aesthetically pleasing and appealing. It's not like Klaus level lighting, but I think it's really cool, and I think that's probably.
I think that's all you need. Also.
But we'll share that eventually. Maybe the next devlog update we'll share that so people can kind of see exactly the look we're shooting at, but. Let's get to the second part of this question, which was kind of fun. I thought TAC user asked, for the Big Top Burger animation, is the burger truck interior one model, or is it sections split up into different models?
So I think most people would know that the quote-unquote correct and easy solution would be have it split up into little models and have it be a separate set from the exterior.
Yeah.
It is not. It is all one big model, and I do squeeze them in there. They actually do fit in that little space. Although it's one big model, but I have made all the walls and windows movable because the camera just won't fit. Right? I can fit the characters in, but you can't fit the camera in. Well, this was fascinating to me because I hadn't worked with this before. Is I was like, I can put the camera in, but I'd have to crank the focal length to the, like Naruto, fisheye level. Yeah. And I was like, that's not funny. Funny is a very like flat, like a.
Well, have you just have you just like adjusted the clip start? Because that's all I do for our models. I just have it, like the camera can actually slice the model in front of it. And you can choose exactly how.
Oh.
You didn't know? Did I just give you a tip? Did I teach Worthikids a thing about Blender?
I did not. I knew about Clipstar. I didn't think to use it there, and I will say it is much more entertaining for me to actually detach the wall because it feels like I'm filming a real movie. Because they do that in real film sets.
Yeah,
they have
you need a set
walls.
that's versatile to accommodate whatever camera movement you need or camera angle you need, and frequently you'll just use a different set entirely or something, and or you'll fudge things, and so it's actually it's pretty impressive that you've got just like one model and you just like kind of actually put them in there. That's pretty cool.
It was like one of the most eye-opening things I saw just about like cinematography. It was like the dumbest thing, but it was for it was either for the show Boy Meets World or Growing Pains or something, like one of those Disney like 90s TV shows. And they were showing this behind the scenes thing, and they had the classroom that they're in, and they were showing how the classroom was actually 9 desks, and they just use like different angles they shoot it at because like no one's paying attention to what the extra kids look like. They only care about like, you know, the main characters. So like if you have the same kids in every shot, no one notices that the classroom is made of like 9 kids. But it's like, you know, they just have this like little square of desks, and then they pick their angles selectively, and it makes it look like it's a classroom of like 30 kids.
Yeah.
We have the advantage in our situation where because the characters are not literally in the set, like I could put them in there and they are sort of to scale, but also I'm drawing them in there, so I don't have to really worry about whether or not that's like physically possible in that space, because it's like, so long as it looks right in the shot, nobody's gonna know that actually his tail couldn't possibly fit in that space, and it would be like a giant mess. It's like nobody really knows.
I definitely have some shots where they're like sitting at the bar, and like, you know, it's like from one angle it's like, okay, so they're sitting like one seat apart from each other, like, you know, and then when I have them like, you know, it's like it's turning at an angle, so it's sort of like a 3/4 at the bar, so you can see kind of like everybody and they can all do their acting and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like in reality they're all spread, like there's like 3 seats of space between each of them, but it's like, you know, you buy it. It's fine.
It depends on the angle. Yeah, we were doing some board revisions and we were like sliding Wick back and forth. He's just like in random chairs.
Apparently he teleports
wherever he needs to be.
Yeah. So, but nobody knows because it's like you don't actually know what the physical space is there. There's a shot where like the car is closer in the shot than it is in the literal set because it just made more sense for that shot to see it there. And you go like, well, technically they'd be walking for a few more minutes, but we're not going to show that because that's boring. Because I'm not going to have a few minutes of them just walking and be like, so, have you seen the latest sports ball? You know, just idle conversation about nothing. Filling up nothing. Is like you got to get to the next shot. You got to make it move. You got to keep the pace up. So you just warp reality to fit your pacing. Basically.
Well, that's I mean, one of my favorite tricks when there's like something that's gonna be like a complicated animation that you're like, I don't want to do that, but I want to like, you know, like, okay, so for a good example of this is like Gwen. There's an episode of Ben 10 where Gwen's wearing like the spaceman helmet and she has to take the helmet off, but their heads are so huge and their necks are so tiny that like the helmet, you know, like it's not the right, like there's no physical way to like bring this thing over her head and keep it like a rigid, stiff, like fishbowl shape. And so I have her like starting to like unattach it and lift it up, and then we cut away to like Ben saying a line and we go to her and she's finishing taking it off. And so it's like we just cheated our way out of like not having to show the complicated impossible thing by just like, you know, and it's like I'll use that so many times. There's like, you know, if you show a character start to go in one direction and then like cut away to another character reacting and then go back to the character like reaching the destination, and like, you know, people just like fill in the blanks in their head.
Yeah, it's a effective movie tricks, basically. Very, very, very effective tricks. There's a number of segments in the short where like a character like picks up objects. And it's like, it's multiple objects.
Yeah, or they fiddle with a car engine, or they climb in through a window or something, and you just like cut around it so that...
Yeah, because like the actual movement of that working would like require so much finagling to make it look right on the animator's part. And they can do it, but you don't have time. You don't have time to show that complete action. So it's easier to just cut around it. And besides the fact, if it was a physical set, you'd probably do the same thing. Because again, it would just be awkward to show a guy climbing in through a window while another guy is like sticking halfway out the window. And it's like, how does that work? That window is like really tiny though. It's like, you don't got to show everything. And a lot of film and television making is learning what not to show. Because it's not important. You figure out what is and isn't important, and you make decisions about where you want to linger and for what reasons. Because, like, I think a good example is, like, if there's a guy and he's in a room and he has to like go outside, like he's gonna go walk down the street. Do you have to show him literally going for every step of the process of getting out the door, where it's like he has to put on his shoes and find his keys and then put the key, turn the knob and then close the door and then turn the key in the lock to lock the door and then walk down the stairs, and you see him walking down every set of stairs and then going to the door at the bottom. He has to push open that door and now he's out of the street and he's walking. Do you have to do that, or could you just show him putting on his shoes and he opens the door, he steps out, and then immediately cut to him outside?
Yeah, you cut out the interesting stuff. Yeah,
so this is a thing that I kept meaning to I've always wanted to just kind of like do a tutorial on sort of the difference between like cinematic boards and like, sort of like sitcom boards, like TV boards. And it's like, I've never made it. So but my Cole's notes for it was like, I wanted to do a scene that was just showing kind of like, if you have the luxury of cinema and you're trying to make it like look big and beautiful and grandiose and stuff, it's like, this is how you'd approach it, of just like a scene with like two guys going to the gym. And it's like, if you have all the budget in the world and you're trying to like really sell the environment and sell people on the idea this is a gym, it's like, you'd have the establishing shot of the gym and you'd show like, maybe the guys like walking through the gym and everybody doing their workouts and stuff, and you'd show the guys like getting the weights off the rack. But if you're making like a Flash cartoon for YouTube, then like you probably just start right on like the dudes standing at the rack, like already in the middle of their reps. And like, then you've got like your repeating animation you can use, and like, everybody gets the point that it's a gym. And it's just that like, are we showing off and are we like creating a mood, or are we just like trying to communicate the idea of what's happening right now?
Yeah, it's like the efficiencies are more in the interest of like, what are you trying to communicate, which is what you're trying to communicate, that people are at the gym or they walked out the door, or are you trying to show the process of the person going through this because their experience in the environment is the story you're telling? And you choose what is necessary for that. You go like, what is needed for this shot? What motivates this? What's interesting about it? Is it just filler, or is there something I'm learning from here? And a lot of filmmaking is just, how are you communicating your idea? Like, what is this about? What are you communicating? What are we learning from this? And it doesn't have to be strictly everything is plot centric or anything like that. Anything that doesn't motivate the plot can't happen. That doesn't account for the idea of mood and environment and like how that can build an emotional connection to what you're doing. But that emotional connection is part of the equation, and so you think about that when you're writing and you're putting everything together.
I mean, another really big thing, I think, when you're picking kind of like what shots you're going to use and like, when we can put in an establishing shot and stuff like that, is a matter of like, what can we reuse and stuff? Like, it's like, if there's a background, I mean, I notice this especially when I'm, like doing things for TV shows and stuff, where it's like, you kind of have like a count all the time. But it's like, if there's a background that you're like, oh, I really want this angle, but like it's only going to be in that one shot, then you kind of have to think, it's like, okay, so how long is it going to take the background artist to like make that background? And if it like, is it worth it for one shot? Like, this could be a great, it's like, is the shot, like, what's worth more, the background artist's time or this shot in the sequence? And then you kind of, it's like, sometimes it's not even a matter of story. It's like, this shot might sell it and make it look beautiful, but it's like, if it's not the, like the hero shot of the scene, then like, maybe we should save some backgrounds for that. It's like, if the background artist can draw like 20 backgrounds, then like, take one background from this sequence and add it to that sequence, and that's where, you need that money shot.
Yeah. The so we've been doing this for 2 hours, and I would like to get through the rest of the questions, so I'm going to ask Worthy, like, how are you feeling right now? How's your energy?
I don't know. I'm doing all right. I can keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Please
all right.
say so.
We'll
if you want to cut this off, let's focus on questions.
Yeah.
TAC user has another follow-up question. Says, how long have you worked with Freestyle for? I've used it a bit in the past, but the slow rendering speed and lack of a preview function kind of put me off from actually using it in anything.
You were right to be put off. I will say, moving forward, I would like to not use Freestyle.
What is Freestyle?
So Freestyle is it's a render pass in Blender that you can turn on, and it just adds outlines to every single object that you tell it to. But it does take a little bit to render, especially if you have a lot of objects, and it's difficult to control. And what I've seen bleeps and bloops on Twitter that they're working on an alternative, which is Grease Pencil, I mean, it is a grease pencil version of freestyle where it'll generate grease pencil lines in real time on top of the objects as if it were outlines. And you can see those in the viewport, and it's supposedly faster than freestyle. So I'm holding out for that. Because I don't want to keep using freestyle. It is very annoying.
Oh, yeah. That might indeed be useful for stuff we're doing as well, so...
Yeah, it depends how quickly they come up with it. Their development process has been, like, very quick. I'm super happy with how quick they've been because they've brought grease pencil up to a point where we can use it instead of just, I guess this is good for a shot. Like, I can feel more confident about using it in general. Okay, so next question by Nino Lusoso. For everybody, what do you think about the new cartoons? I believe this is what we think of Worthikids' layest cartoons, and I gush about them forever. I love them.
Oh yeah,
There's a reason we're talking to Worthy right now.
They are a bright spot in your day when they come out, definitely.
Thank you.
Aww.
Charming clown show.
It's like I don't know if she wants me to call her out like this, but I have a friend who wants to. She's been trying to do a cosplay of I forget all the name. Penny. Yeah. She was like trying to do spoonflower and figure out how to make the fabric. So I don't know if me saying this out loud, she's like, oh no, now I have to do it.
But, Let's go do it and then send pictures to Worthikids.
Well, the polka dots are quite mean, and I don't think about cosplayers. I'm sorry, cosplayers. I know it's mean to put a bunch of polka dots on everything.
You just have to do them by hand. Okay, so next question. Margaret McFarlane asks. You want to?
Worthy, I'm sure you've been asked this before a lot, but I was hoping to know what programs you use for your 2D and 3D animations. I think we've kind of covered that already, but if you want to just list off anything.
Blender for both. There.
Right. And you said you use Clip Studio as well?
I use Clip Studio for some backgrounds in the 2D animations, but very rarely.
What did you use before Blender for the 2D animations?
Adobe Flash CS6. I used that for a couple years, and I hated it, and I still hate it.
Oh yeah, Flash is the abusive boyfriend of the animation industry. James Lee's recent animation calling Adobe out as if it's like an abusive partner. I'm like, yeah, that's a feel. It's like a little too real.
It's like I'll try to keep it short, but no, I remember like way back in the day when they first figured out how to make like TV quality animation in Flash, and a bunch. I don't know who exactly it was, but it was like a bunch of animators went to like Macromedia or Adobe or whatever, whoever owned it at the time, and they were like, here's some things you could change that would make this program like great for us and we'd be able to do our jobs easier. And they were like really rude to them. They were like, like, you're using the program wrong, that's not what it's meant for, and like, this is a programming tool, not an animation tool, like we don't care about animators. And then HTML5 came on the scene and Flash became irrelevant as a programming tool, and they're like, hey, animators, what can we do to make it easier for you?
Would you like a camera tool for once in a program that doesn't glitch and crash every time you lock a layer and also hide it visibly at the same time, and then turn on onion skin and any number of glitches that you just had to work around when you're using Flash/now Animate? Boy, that makes it difficult, guys. Why do you name it Animate? Do you know how difficult it is to Google information about your product now when you name it a common verb associated with what you're using it for?
Yeah.
God damn you guys, just keep the name. The name wasn't the problem. Anyway.
All right.
Next question. You want to go say it out loud?
Empire Cat says, been a fan of both Lackadaisy and Tamberlane for a while. Since Tamberlane in a previous stream. Oh, I think we mentioned it. I
guess it was something Ashley must have mentioned.
Yeah. Are you planning on inviting Caitlin Vibrant as a guest in a future stream? Piper is my character. Cool. We were talking about possibly bringing in some webcomic artists as well, so that's certainly within the realm of possibility. And if that's somebody people would be interested in hearing from, we will make note of that.
Yeah, like we would love to ask the guests even like, who do you know that would be good to have on the show, who needs a shout out or like is deserving of some attention, because like
I don't who you just like to get some insight and
information
from.
If you're just like I just like to hear them talk, we'll try to reach out to them. And hopefully they take my query seriously.
Charlie Richards says, hi, Worthy. I love that A Night Like This bumper you did for Adult Swim. It's so funny, wonderfully sincere, and uniquely you. How did you come up with the idea, and what was it like working with Adult Swim?
Thank you so much, Charlie. coming up with the idea. Well, they asked me to do 3 pitches, or 2 to 3 pitches for ideas. And I came up with, that was the first one I came up with, is I was like, well, actually they specifically asked for it to be the fake stop motion style, which was very flattering. Like the person was like, I saw your Hatbox Ghost animation. I would like it to look like that if that's possible. And I was like, I'm sure. No, I just started doing it and nobody's asked for it before. So I knew it was going to be the Rankin Bass look. And I was, I originally had it as this Vincent Price type character, and he's in Fire and he tells a scary story. And then I was like, oh, Vincent Price, I love him, but he's very overplayed as like a spooky icon reference. And I was like, okay, who else could I reference? And I was very excited to do Paul Frees, who of course is a Rankin Bass voice actor. He's also a Disney voice actor, but I based the design off of the way Paul Frees looked later in life. He had these giant mutton chops and big mustache. And then it kind of went from there. I was like, oh, well, if it's Paul Frees, I should do an impression, and I should make the whole thing very Rankin Bass. I included like this weird chord that's in the Hobbit soundtrack. And so it ended up being very much just a tribute to Rankin Bass. And working with Adult Swim was cool. I also did another short for them that not a lot of people have seen. It's kind of a bummer. They just haven't posted it, honestly. I think it's on the channel, but it's not online. I don't know.
No, I want to see it because like you're mentioning this Adult Swim bump, but I don't like watch TV anymore. Like all my media consumption is whatever I can find on the internet. So I gotta watch this bumper because people keep talking about it. Like,
okay.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Yeah.
No, that one's online. It's on their Instagram and it's on Twitter, and I think I retweeted it. But the other one that I did is not, and I don't know why.
If you can link that to me, I'd love to take a look.
I will.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
You
did such a incredible job of replicating the stop motion look.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we got another question from Neonpire the Cat. Just heard about the Sepia Tonic working on a music video. If you guys reached the Kickstarter goal, not sure if it made it, but even if you reached the goal, how would you imagine the video to be like? Okay, so we're still taking donations specifically to try to hit that. We believe we can get there if only we keep receiving donations. So that's one reason why we're doing Shop Talk, besides the fact that I just really want to talk to people. I also want to make sure that we keep earning money because that's all buffer so that I know that I can pay the crew consistently and I don't have to sit there and go like, damn, we can't keep this person on the team. I have to cut them loose because we ran out of money for the design budget or something. So it doesn't go into our pockets. It goes towards our crew and making sure that they're paid and we don't have to make as many compromises with the production if we hit a wall in terms of funding. Because what you saw on the Kickstarter, like what we raised, is not actually the amount of money that we have.
Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter takes its cut, and taxes will take its cut, and credit card fees money. Take their cut. Yeah, so it's.
And then like the cost of the merchandise is another thing, and you can recoup that cost, but it's going to take time because until the merch actually sells, you don't have that money, so you can't count on that money. So all that means that what you saw us earn is actually a lot
not
less.
Quite what you have in pocket at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we do.
I can't believe my friend Fable has $330,000
in their
pocket.
Yeah, we all just I'll just pocketed it. Yeah, it doesn't work
Meanwhile,
that way.
I'm begging the internet for chicken tenders, when I do streams. So, because I am a scavenger.
No one's getting rich off of this thing. But we would like to be able to make it as good as we possibly can. And
pay everybody as fairly as we can.
Pay everybody fairly, of course. And
as far as what we imagine the video to be like, I was picturing a mix of live action and elements of the short kind of mixed in, and some original animation thrown in there too, with some like interesting compositional effects and that kind of thing. So you could like have like a the shadow of a character like animated playing in the background. There's like the live action people, and so we really wanted the Sepia Tonic music video to feel like kind of animated elements within what Sepia Tonic already does for their music videos, because they do some really charming ones where it's like colorful people walking down the street and they're just kind of like having a good time together and the song is happening, and I like that energy. So I don't want to go too ambitious. I just kind of like want to do something fun with like fun flourishes so that it can come together like a little bit more easily than the huge labor that is making this short. So something much more loose and goofy, basically. Thank you, Fetch Monkey, for the $50 for our Fables Chicken Tendies fund. Like I said, it doesn't go to me. It
Thank
goes
you so
to
much,
the crew.
Fetch. You've been incredibly generous.
Yes, thank you so much, Fetch. I really appreciate it. That goes to other people's Chicken Tendies fund, basically. Feeds them the tendies.
Okay, Tack User says, I'm not up to date on the Lackadaisy animation, but is your team using Toon Boom or TV Paint for the animation? We're using Toon Boom.
For cleanup, we're using Toon Boom. Some of our animators, when they're doing rough animation, they can use whatever program they are comfortable in, so long as we can conform it to what's needed for the rest of the program. So they have to work at a certain size, draw outside the margins to a degree, make sure the frame rate is a certain way. The trouble with that is making sure that when they do exports that it conforms to how TV can function and that there's not going to be a bunch of dropped frames. So you have to make sure that when they're doing their animation, they have some safety frames, because that happens. You'll just have the thing export and it just drops some frames at the end. This is a problem with Flash quite frequently. But rather than worrying about them trying to get used to a system that they're not familiar with, I'd rather them just feel relaxed in a program and be able to noodle where it's comfortable for them. But also, we only have so much money for licenses, and all of our Toon Boom licenses are prioritized for cleanup. So we'll be giving some licenses to folks who just don't have they might not have TV Paint and they don't really want to work in Flash, and I'll be like, sure, you can have this license. But we have to be careful about that because there's only so many that we can get. We did at least get something of a deal from Toon Boom, so we have like a little bit of a discount just because we were buying so many bulk licenses, and we were talking with them like months before even the Kickstarter launch. I was talking with them about what could be done, so I was in active communication with those guys. But it costs money, and I just don't want to ask our team members to spend the money that I'm paying them to also buy the program if they're not going to use that program for anything outside of our production. And because I have a fear that with the way that animation is going and how virtual studio is going to become more common thanks to the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, that studios are going to start getting this idea in their head that they can just not spend any money on software or equipment and just have, put all that cost on the crew, and that's how they're going to try to save a buck, which is a really bad idea. Yeah. Like a really, really bad idea.
You want to think that couldn't possibly happen, but given how
it can happen,
studios tend to treat people, and they'll, how they'll pay you a salary based on a 40-hour work week and then demand that you work 60 hours is, I mean, wouldn't put it past them to
take the buck in any way they can, and they'll take the buck out of their crew faster than they will out of upper management. Like they won't take a dime out of upper management, but they'll nickel and dime crew for sure.
Yeah, so not to imply really that every studio is like that. Certainly, if you're looking for studio work, I mean there are some that have toxic work environments and some that are lovely.
There are certainly some studios that will. It's like the producer gets a bonus based on how much money they save on production, and it's like, I don't know how that's not embezzlement, but
how
that incentivizes abusing your staff.
Yeah. Right. Meanwhile, I'm more concerned about people going like, oh, I wasn't paid well, and then they talk shit about the production, and then what defense do I have if I actually did a bad job of management and they didn't get their money?
We want everybody to be happy for
I want them to come back.
Myriad reasons. We want them to be happy and well paid and have a good experience with this. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Tack User says, this question goes for anyone, but how did you feel about creating a series when you started out? I've thought about it, but it's a scary thought because it requires commitment to an idea. A series being anything from a comic to an animation. I'm going to hand this one over to Worthy to answer. We did talk a little bit about this already, but if you have anything further to add about
I didn't find it particularly daunting with Big Top Burger because it's not very long. It's just 5 episodes. I guess if I was trying to come up with something like super long, that would be pretty daunting. But at a certain point, I think when you do a bunch of really short animations, you do start to get a little like, I want to do more in this world. just a little more. And so you actually get drawn to slightly more ambitious ideas.
So you did mention briefly like a season 2 for Big Top Burger. Is that something you're definitely planning on doing, or is that kind of a leave it up in the air?
I think I want to label it as a maybe, but I think it's a definitely, because people like this, which I wasn't sure if they would, and I would adore getting to work with Lindsay, Tim, all the actors again, and having them reprise the roles. I don't know what would happen in it, but I'll finish. And I will say that if there is a season 2, I won't do it for another year probably, because I have a bunch of other stuff I need to get to. But
you give yourself that break so that you can noodle the idea more, and maybe then you can, if you get to a point where you can bring on more people, then you can definitely get more ambitious, because they'll help you out. So yeah, I have to keep myself from looking too far ahead in the future for when this project is done, because I cry a little and go like, I love listening to everybody's work is like so engaging, and like the voice actors are so charming, and I love to hear them bounce off of each other. I love everybody having a good time together. It's like it's a work environment, but it's got that kind of entertainment of like listening in on the party, and everybody's really interesting. You're just kind of floating around and listening to the conversations, and you just you don't want it to end. So I have to not think about when it can and possibly will end, because then I get sad.
Yeah, it is a finite project, and so but I mean, but when you finish, you move on to a new thing, and meet new people, and you bring some of the people that you met here with you. You hire, you end up probably hiring some of the same voice actors and some of the same animators and board artists and everything. So it's not like not like everybody just goes their separate ways entirely, or
I mean, there's definitely even if we don't keep doing Lackadaisy past this point, there's a lot of people that we've worked with already where I'm like, oh, I could definitely use you on this in the future if I ever got the money for it.
It's a way to make connections and lasting connections. And,
So Tac User also asks, how long have you worked with Freestyle for? I've used it a little bit in the past.
I think we got that one already.
Oh yeah, okay, never mind. Bella Ingram asks, is fitting the models onto the set in any way reminiscent of stop motion animation?
Yes, it's more reminiscent in my more stop motion imitation-ish animations. In the 2D stuff, there is a lot of elements that wouldn't be possible with a real set. There's a lot of fake 2D cutouts that sit around and floating stuff. But yeah, it is reminiscent of stop motion. Kind of, I quite like that about it. They're like little figures that I pose around in the scene. It's very entertaining.
Also, regarding the fire in your Adult Swim promo, why did you choose the method you did, and not something like a flat image plane with an animated texture? And this is Tac User's question.
Oh, that goes well with my previous answer. When I'm doing the stop motion stuff, the Rankin Bass stuff, which is different for me from the 2D stuff, for the 3D 2D imitation stuff. When I'm doing the stop motion stuff, it's a very cathartic experience for me, and it's important for me that even though it is digital, it needs to feel as much like a real set as humanly possible. And so using an image plane that's playing a texture back, that's not possible. It needs to be like a little cutout. It needs to be like a paper cutout of fire. Otherwise, it's no fun.
Yeah, there's the efficient way to do it, but then there's but this would be more fun though. So you always got to find the balance between one method and another. But it's always really fun when you get to experiment with your projects. Okay, so Tech User also asks, this question goes for anyone, but how did you feel about creating a series when you started out?
Wait, we just...
Oh, Jesus,
sorry.
I should put in my glasses. I really should put in my glasses.
Fanbo,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, did it take long for you guys to figure out what type of rig you needed to handle the software you used? Currently shopping for a new desktop. I'm close to just caving and buying a gaming computer. I'd say that if you're going to get a computer with the purposes of doing animation, while you can use a potato, I don't recommend it.
You probably want a dedicated video card, graphics card.
Yeah, a gaming computer at minimum, frankly. I'll be perfectly honest. Because the kind of stuff that's you're going to ask the computer to do when you're doing animation and video production and audio editing is actually beefier than what games do, because games are actually written to be efficient and played in a certain way, and you want to invest in good equipment, and do a lot of research on that equipment, because like if you don't invest in it, it'll bite you in the ass in other ways down the line. Trust me, we've already had a few crew members whose potatoes blew up. So
I mean, my computer wasn't even that bad, but I had like the horror story of like, like I was, because I was doing this on top of my full-time job, and it was, this super heavy, intense episode at work, and then, it was like the tight kind of turnaround on this to like get everything, together, like on all the schedules and that, and so I was just like not sleeping. And I was like on my last day of it, I was like, okay, the final push to like finish this thing off, and I worked for like 6 hours, and then it was like while I was saving, the process of because like Storyboard Pro, it will like kind of like pack the file back together when it's saving it, and so saving it is what made my machine overheat and shut itself off, and because it did that while it was saving, it corrupted the save, and so I lost everything I'd done for those last 6 hours. So I was like finally in the like like I will finish this and it'll be done, and then I can sleep. And it was like, nope, it'll be done in 6 more hours, and then you can sleep.
I at least like, I heard about your issues and stuff, and I was like, Kelly, it's fine, Kelly, just go to bed. It's like the project's not gonna like die because like you needed to take some extra time. You weren't even the only one. Like everybody needed more time, and that was partly my fault, not not thinking about.
I think it's just
this around a
it's like
full-time job. Yeah. So
it's the importance of communicating, because everybody, like, we're all pretty much friends on the like it's like we all know each other, and it's like you don't want to disappoint people you're working with. It's like like everybody here, I've been reading this comic like forever, and so you're like, oh, I don't want to disappoint Tracy, and like I don't want to disappoint my best friend Fable, and like I don't want to disappoint
I didn't want to
the
kill
other board artists I'm working on.
No, we
That's
don't.
important in your health.
I don't want to like make you suffer, so yeah, don't.
But
just,
everyone, it's everyone's neurotic art brains, and that's why we all have to communicate with each other.
I have to tell the crew on the regular, and like, look, they teach you to be a certain way, and basically expect and even invite abuse when you are learning in college, or like when you have worked in the business. Like the kinds of stuff that you put up with, it just kind of become normalized, and you're just like, well, I gotta just not sleep and then not get paid for that, and then like hide that I'm actually like deathly ill, and et cetera, and I tell everybody, please don't do that. I want good work from you, not just work. I would rather it took longer and that you were okay than for you to kill yourself over booze cats of all things. I love it, but honestly, your health and safety is way more important to me than booze cats. So it will be fine. The way I've scheduled it stuff is with the anticipation that time will slide. Like I have margins packed into the time budget for that reason. Like we're already about to slide forward because like there was a lot more noodling that we decided to do with the revisions, and us just being picky bitches about stuff that just ended up tacking on time, so that I'm not even through the edit, and I had to give the audio that we did to Clint to split up because I can't take the time to cut up the audio.
Mm-hmm.
So and then that takes time because he can do it, but he's not gonna like be super fast at it. So as a result, we've slid forward a week, but that's fine because I have months of slide around time. So if you need to take a day, it's not a big deal. And I know that can add up, but it's like we've actually done an extraordinary job of keeping on schedule with very little slide around. I'm a little bit astounded, and frankly, the only reason why we're having to slide the time budget is because I can't ask other people to do these revisions. I don't have a budget for revisions, and besides, it's like so specific, the things that I want, that it's just better if I do it rather than I ask somebody else to conform stuff for me.
Okay.
So
gotta move along.
yeah. Anyway, enough about that.
Anyway, it's like long story short, have a nice computer and
have a nice
you'll thank yourself.
Please.
I can't really comment on Toon Boom usage or things like Storyboard Pro, but I do know that, I have a gaming laptop here, and it has had hardware issues right out of the box, which cause it to crash. However, it does just fine with Blender and Studio Max, and just as however, like I routinely work with like 2 gigabyte Photoshop files, and it does okay with those. So I mean, you probably don't need something that's like if you're working in 3D anyway, you don't need something that's a like enormous behemoth. I think probably video editing is probably what you'd need the most
video and audio.
For a computer. But if you're not doing that exactly, and you're just like animating little things yourself or something, you could probably get away with a gaming laptop, or
if that's the best thing you can find, then I can recommend that, because definitely the laptops I got earlier on were like more gaming focused.
But again, probably a
setup.
cheaper thing and a more upgradable thing to go with like a desktop that you.
I really recommend
desktop,
desktops.
like, build yourself.
Because it's when stuff breaks, then you can just fix it, as opposed to when it's like
you can update things and add more RAM and So okay. Roxas says, would Big Top Burger make a cameo in the comic? Oh,
I feel like it's more possible for things to go the other way, where suddenly it's just like a talking cat goes up to the food truck, than having a food truck full of clowns show up in 1927.
If I ever have a need for, like, I don't know that burger trucks were a thing in the 20s. Like, there were trucks, but and there were like food stands, but like a burger truck would be quite the novelty. So I mean, if I ever have an excuse to put something like that in, I will go straight to Worthy and ask if I can like make a cat version of Steve and Penny.
Reprise someone.
Yeah.
But just if it goes in the reverse, Worthy, if I could make a cheeky suggestion. It's like I don't know. I don't want to like dictate stuff.
I already owe Worthy some fan art, because he did such wonderful drawings of Lackadaisy characters as like human characters. And
wait, he did?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
You never saw that, really? We were
I haven't talked about this at all, but I've been a Lackadaisy fan for almost like 10 years,
wow.
I think. It's me and my sister's favorite webcomic of all time. We adore it.
Oh my god!
And we talk about it all the time. She's very excited that I'm on this interview thing.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much.
So sweet.
People are on we're messaging, we're like posting up stuff when we announced that you were going to be on Shop Talk. They're like, "Oh my god, you got Worthikids? How do you get Worthikids?" And I was like, "Just emailed him."
You've been so friendly and accommodating. Thank you. You were just awesome.
Really
I'm just picturing like 5 burgers in a pentagram with like candles lit.
We had to summon him. Yes.
The other way, but I can't. It's hard to go get the burgers, so email will have to suffice. Probably end up eating them myself. I couldn't stop.
Yeah. That's what those chicken tendies funds are going to.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So yeah, but yeah, I had this funny image in my head when I read that. I was like, I don't know that the food truck could appear in the comic, but it would be funny if like just a random cat walked up and tried to order a burger, and it's Mike's voice coming out of that cat. It's not even anthropomorphized; it's just a cat.
Well, didn't someone do something in Big Top Burger, or was that different?
Said that, and now I'm intrigued. So
it's not. Yeah, that episode's the one that's on the way, and it's a very brief cameo. But this one has a bunch of cameos. I'm very excited for people to see this one. It's just taking a while to make.
I can't wait.
Because of all the cameos.
Rocky getting anywhere near Steve would be a problem. I don't think Rocky should interact with eldritch creatures, even ones as like whimsical and funny as Steve. It's like some strange fairy man, fey creature running a food truck.
I noticed that the jewel he referenced in the last one was like, it was just like a cylinder, and
it was just primitive.
It just made me laugh so hard.
Doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah.
Gray primitive.
I originally was gonna have it be a jewel, but I wrote that episode like a year ago. I wrote it before there was stuff about how jewels are like maybe bad for you, and so I was like, oh, this is a bad look. Maybe I should make it like a donut or something. And then I had the idea. I was like, oh, if it's a cylinder, no, that's a laugh.
It is. I laughed so hard at that. It was just...
Although I wanted it to be more low poly, But when you add a cylinder in Blender, it puts a pop-up on the bottom left, and it's like, do you want to change the poly? And I'm like, oh yeah, just give it less vertices. And every time it crashed, and I was like, why are you crashing one thing? Which is, it's a bug. It's definitely like a
do all the
bug,
sophisticated stuff. It can't handle a low poly cylinder.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
All right. Next question.
Let's
the
go to
Empire of the Cat. Yeah.
Okay. Been very excited for Lackadaisy animated project. Really looking forward to seeing Ivy and Freckle fully animated. What character from Lackadaisy are you most excited to see animated?
What, us or Worthy?
This one's highlighted in red. Oh, it's me.
I want to ask
all
everybody.
of them. I mean, gosh, like the character design sheets that Lee has been doing are just amazing, and the test animations that the animators have been doing have been just so fun to watch. I mean, they all look so promising. I mean, I'm just like excited for all of it. There's certain scenes that are like certainly like highlight points that I'm excited for, but I don't want to like spoil that stuff. So,
we have cool shit in it.
Yeah,
planned.
I mean, like all of them. I can't pick favorites among the brain children, I guess. So, I just have to.
I mean, we do know which ones are your special babies, but in a way, they're all your special babies.
Oh yeah,
so.
they all are. I've been like excruciatingly picky about Seraphine's design and everything. So, I apologize for that.
He has been so good about following along with that. Like Lee has a hard job. They're taking Tracy's work and Ty's work,
filtering it through Ty's work, and then making it animatable and drawing it from every possible angle, and
putting up with our constant like, no, this line here needs to be different. And I'm just like, I'm so impressed by Lee's
Lee's got the patience of a saint, and
that's
she's
like so lovely.
That's
oh my god, no,
so
Lee is 100% the reason that like my 4th year film at Sheridan like actually happened. Like, you know, like I got to like, you know, there was a point where I was like, this film isn't going to be done. Like, it was all traditionally animated. I had like hundreds and hundreds of sheets of like paper and stuff, and like I got to a point where I was like, oh shit, I could actually like get all this animation done on time. Like, you know, I got to the point I was like not even line testing it. I was just like, all right, it's matching up with the lip sync, and the lip sync's timed out, so whatever. I gotta trust that it works. And I got to like the last week, and I had 7 days to like get this thing finished and colored and done. And, you know, I sat down in a chair and I sat there for 20 hours just like scanning pieces of paper. And I was like, all right, I'm so tired. I have to go sleep. I can't do this anymore. And then Lee came up. She's like, all right, we're gonna make this. And she sat down. She like helped me scan the entire rest of it.
Wow. Yeah, Lee's been incredible. Very glad to have her contribution.
Because like when Ty had to jet for a different project, like we were just like, oh no, what do we do? And I was like, I'll ask Kelly. Kelly knows even more industry people than me. Surely she knows someone who can handle this. And you recommended Lee, and I've just been so pleased with Lee's work. And hopefully they listen to this later, and then they can like blush and be really embarrassed.
Yeah, we all love you, Lee.
We love you so much. You're doing great. Like the characters are so fun to draw, and it's largely thanks to Lee, and like just doing a stellar job of translating everything. It's like, yeah, no, I can do this. It's helped me with the boards, that's for sure. Yeah. So I don't have to sit there and redraw an ear 5 times and wondering if it's right.
Okay, last couple of questions for Worthy. Yes. What's something new you want to experiment with in Blender from Tac User?
I don't really think features first. I usually think of an idea that I want to create, and then I figure out, you know, what are the challenges of that idea as I go. But I'm not super interested. In terms of Blender features, everything that's in there right now is everything that I need. They can add more stuff, and if it's really cool. Well, I guess the thing, I hinted at earlier, if they add a grease pencil version of Freestyle, that would be fantastic. I'd love to use that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's maybe 2 kinds of creators. There's the ones who are like the ones who love fidgeting and experimenting with new technology and new software and things like that, and seeing what they can do, what the possibilities are, and then tailoring something to that. And then there's the people who have just like, I have an idea, now I need to go find the tools and figure out how to make it like work. So I'm definitely in the latter camp myself. It sounds like you are too.
I flip back and forth. So am I a third person?
Yeah, I guess maybe a little bit.
I'm perpetually like flicking back and forth between things. Like blame my non-binariness. It's like I can't decide between anything. I'm this and I'm that.
I feel like, you know, the only way that I can carrot and stick myself to like finish things is like I have to figure out like where, you know, it's like what is my bottleneck where I'm going to like lose momentum, and how do I like, you know, get around that? Like what can I possibly do? Like what is the thing that I will actually finish making?
Yeah, work smarter, not harder is certainly something that I've had to learn the hard way to start applying. But
so what do you want to experiment with in Blender then? Where they like I know they're updating their lighting engine, for instance, so that it can interact with Grease Pencil more, and that has me very interested.
Oh, that's in the new version. I've been using it, and I really don't like it, and it's turned on by default, which is very annoying because I have to turn it off for every layer.
Oh, no.
You have to click don't use lights, don't use lights, don't use lights. So I wish they would change that to not be the default, because I don't find it useful.
Yeah, or they
at least give you a universal toggle so you don't have to do every layer.
Yeah.
I know they got the new like sculpt cloth tool, which is interesting.
That one's cool. I don't think I have much use for it, but it is cool.
Yeah. You don't want to just randomly inflate stuff. Yeah. You build a bounce house for the Big Top Burger. They're gonna make the burger while they're bouncing around, or the customer.
That sounds fun. Now I want that short.
Yeah, the burger just bounces into your mouth. It's great. So
okay.
Yeah, is there? Yeah. Okay. So next question.
Okay, I think this is the last question from the chat for Worthy. Just wanted to say your animation style is fantastic and hilarious, and it would mean the world to me if you would say hi to my friend Arthur. He's a huge fan, and so am I.
Hello, Arthur. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
Oh, you can't respond. Whatever. Hello.
I'm saying your name.
Yeah.
I'm saying the name Arthur. How do you feel, Arthur, about that, Arthur? What's it like being an aardvark?
All right. So that's I just want to say thank you, Worthy, for humoring all of these questions and for taking the time out of your day to spend with us here.
Oh, it's no problem. Thank you.
It
was super fun.
It's been great getting some like insight into your process, your creative process, and like the technical side of things that you do, and of course it's always wonderful to see like independent artists making a success of their own thing. That's really, really wonderful and encouraging too. So.
I'm amused by this one comment that Mooncat just says, like, I like how one show is all like serious and stuff, while the other is just like, wow. And I'm like, you have no idea how unserious we are about the Boost Cats. We undermine them all the time.
Oh god, everything we do is making fun of them. Yeah.
Oh my god, all the time. Oh, they are spared nothing.
I wanted to ask Worthy, do you want to plug your Patreon or anything like that?
Yes,
do I have to?
You don't have to. If you want, only if you want to.
Somebody else's Patreon?
Yes. Well, I'd have to put a lot of thought in that. Make sure I pick the right person. I'll say Joni Phillips. Everybody should watch Joni Phillips films and subscribe to her Patreon. She's an indie animator, and she's one of the best in the biz, in my opinion.
Joni Phillips? Is it Jonni?
Jonni, and then Phillips, Phillips.
LL?
LL, double L.
Jonni Phillips.
Okay, I think I found the YouTube channel.
Thank you. If you want to give that to chat as well, and I'll go check that out. Because I would like that as well. I'm like, yes, please recommend me cool stuff. It's how I learn about more. Let's keep reaching out to more people and find little splinters of the indie community that could definitely use the attention. So I'm gonna click that. And
I'll check that out. Later. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, so everybody, thank you so much for donating the money. If you want to help Worthikids, please go check out his Patreon and
subscribe to his YouTube channel.
Yes, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Watch the ads, I guess. Turn off ad block. For Worthikids, turn off ad block and help the production of more goofy clowns in a food truck and much, much more. If you want to help Lackadaisy, we have our PayPal, which was just linked in chat. It is what's the PayPal link called? It's paypal.me patreon.com/Iron Circus. You can donate, and we do offer some post Kickstarter goodies, like digital goodies that you can get in exchange for certain levels of donation. If you go to littledaisycafe.com, you can see our dev blog and also a link to that, so you can keep supporting. And we tend to update the dev blog every 1.5, 2 weeks, depending on how much how much I'm throwing on our poor PA Clint, who is doing a great job writing all those. Really funny guy. So yeah, and yeah, please, if you have recommendations for other people to talk to, you can check out the on the announcement tweet for this shop talk. You can reply to that with like more people to check out. There's definitely folks that I would like to bring on board in the future. There's like a couple I really want to drag on, but it's going to depend on their time and everything. And I would just love for this to keep going, because it's really fun to talk to other people. It's really fun to chat with other people about what they're doing and kind of figure out like what we can learn from each other and how we can support each other. Yeah. So thank you so much, Worthy, for popping on. I love your work.
Thank you.
It's been really fun to chat with you, and this has been a great shop talk.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Second episode. Besides the technical issues, I think we.
Yeah, I apologize once again for that. I will live in shame for the rest of until the next one when I mess it up again. So,
it'll just become the brand. Is Tracy's audio is fucked.
Let's watch Tracy fumble around with the audio settings for like 7 minutes before we start. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thank you, Newt, for curating the questions. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always good to hear from you. And yeah, thank you one last time, Worthy. It's been absolutely a delight. So
thank you.
I had a lot of fun.